D.
Okay, welcome to the January 15th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting. This is an in-person and virtual meeting with Environmental Quality Commission members, city staff, and members of the public. Do roll call. Now I'd like to introduce staff and EQC members present. In the room, we have myself, Vice Chair McKenna, and Commissioners Headley, Meyer, and Pellegrini Yopart, with Commissioner Kissel and Commissioner Hill currently absent. Staff present include Sustainability Manager Rachel Launder and Management Analysis Ori Paz.
He's not here today.
He is not here today. Do we have Liz today?
Nope,
Okay,
just me today.
just Rachel today. So, Ms. Launder, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Absolutely. Thank you. Welcome to our first meeting of the year. I'd like to start by sharing our process for public comment. If you're here to make public comment in person, we have public comment cards over there, and you can hand them to me when we open up public comment. If you are online, you can press *9, or you can use the raise hand feature and we will be able to unmute you. We should have time for up to 3 minutes for your public comment. And I think with that, I'll just return the meeting back to you.
Okay, thank you. So under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. While you are not required to provide your name or city of residence, it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. Sustainability Manager Lunder, please call for public comment.
Absolutely. If you're here to make public comment on item not on the agenda, you can grab a card and return it back to me. If you're calling in from a landline, you can press *9. If you're on Zoom, you can press the raise hand feature either at the bottom of your screen or to the right of your name, depending if you're on a phone or your computer. And I'm looking online for public comment. I don't see any hands raised, so we can move to the room. Any public comments in the room? Okay. We can close public comment and return the meeting to you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to item D, regular business, which is item D1, approve the November 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. Are there any clarifying questions from the EQC before taking public comment? None. Okay, Ms. Lunder, do we have any public comment on this item?
Sure. Let's open up public comment for item D1, approve the November 20th Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. If you have a comment and you're in the room, you can fill out the comment card. If you're online, you can raise your hand or press *9 if you're calling in from a landline. I don't see any in the room or online, so we can close public comment and return the meeting to you, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll now open it up for EQC discussion and or a motion. Any discussion on this item?
No.
A motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second. Okay. Ms. Launder, can you please state the motion?
Motion and second, Headley and Pellegrini Yopart to approve the November 20th, 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. Since we have members missing, we're going to do a roll call vote. Welcome. I'll repeat the motion for you, Brian, so you can vote on this one.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second, Headley, Pellegrini Yopart to approve the November 20th, 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. And we're gonna do a roll call vote. So Vice Chair McKenna,
Aye.
Commissioner Hill absent, Commissioner Headley.
Aye.
Commissioner Kissel.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Pellegrini Yopart.
Aye.
So moved, the motion passes with 5 present, 1 absent, and 1 vacant.
Okay, thank you. So we will now move on to item D2. This is a review and discussion of recommendations related to artificial turf and landscaping from the impact of plastics on the environment. ad hoc subcommittee. So I will get started on this. Do we have the slides?
I do. Sorry about that. Oh, the PDF crashed. Let me open that again. Unless were the Google slides you had? Well, let me just. open this back.
Well, I can just, while Ms. Launder is looking for the slides, I can just make a few opening comments. This is a subcommittee led by Commissioner Headley and myself, with a lot of helpful input from Susan Hinton, who'll be presenting this evening. I think we all understand that we have a significant plastics problem in the world. Just a couple interesting statistics. The plastics industry wants to triple the amount of production of plastic products by the year 2050, knowing we already have a serious problem on our hands. And by 2050, if we continue on the pace that we are at, we are projected to have more plastic in the ocean than fish by weight. So this is a committee report to sort of see what we can do at the local level to address that significant global problem. Just through the agenda here, we'll talk about the scope of our subcommittee, give you a brief overview of the stormwater system in Menlo Park and the permit that we're under for stormwater. And then our presentation will kind of be broken up into two parts. Myself and Susan Hinton will talk about artificial grass and landscaping materials. And then we'll have some recommendations about those two topics specifically, and then we'll have an EQC discussion on that with a vote on what we want to take action on. And then Commissioner Headley will do a presentation on single-use plastics, and we'll have recommendations and discussion on that as well. So our subcommittee was put together to research and present recommendations on programs and policies to prevent stormwater pollution in the city, including artificial turf and single-use plastics. And just a couple of data points on the Menlo Park stormwater system. The city owns and maintains over 46 miles of storm drainage facilities, which drain to San Francisco Creek, Atherton Channel, and eventually the Bay. Important to note that stormwater is not treated, so it directly impacts water, fish, and wildlife. And there are many types of stormwater pollution that we're trying to fight against, namely litter, which includes plastic bags, various chemicals, and organic waste, such as food waste, animal waste, and even some fabrics, which Commissioner Headley will touch on in her presentation. And there really is no single highly effective way to filter microplastics and nanoplastics from storm drains. So the more that we can reduce those items getting into our system, the better. So the Menlo Park, like many jurisdictions in the Bay Area, has a municipal regional permit that's governed by the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. That water board regulates stormwater discharges under the authorities of the Federal Clean Water Act and the California Water Quality Control Act. And as a permittee, Menlo Park, like other permittees, has to adhere to certain criteria. And also, there's a document called the Green Infrastructure Plan, which the water board expects municipalities to implement over the next 20 years in ways to reduce stormwater pollution. So that's really looking at the way cities develop their infrastructure. In sort of specific to our discussion tonight, ways to reduce runoff and recharge groundwater. Artificial turf and landscape fabric do the opposite on both of those points. And then learning about ways to manage the stormwater on different levels, whether it's at the parcel level, the street level, the regional level. They also have some commentary about how parks should be designed as cool islands with trees and pervious surfaces. They should be important refuge from urban heat, radiating cool air radiation and promoting biodiversity. I think we'll learn this evening that artificial turf will create heat islands and will not promote biodiversity. And the San Francisco Estuary Institute is working on new guidance for green stormwater infrastructure regarding the removal of microplastics that permittees will need to consider once that guidance is finalized. So now I'll turn it over to Susan Hinton, who is the chair of the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter's Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee, and she will give us an excellent presentation on artificial turf versus natural grass. Thank you, Susan.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, so here is the slide, the first slide. So the purpose of the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter's Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee is to drastically reduce and ultimately remove unnecessary plastic products known to harm the environment and public health. Very briefly, this is what we will go over. I won't read it to you because we're just going to go through it slide by slide. So just very recently, in October of 2024, Stockholm University released a long report and study where they declared that plastic, just the plastic itself, including microplastics and nanoplastics, worsens every aspect of climate change. And that includes ocean acidification, ozone depletion, land system change, biodiversity loss, and exacerbation of storms, for example. So here's a little bit more about that. Another way of looking at that is that, again, plastic pollution alters major processes at the scale of the globe, the entire Earth. There are millions of tons, hundreds of millions of tons of plastic produced globally every single year, yet globally, less than 9% are recycled, and in the US, less than that. The remainder becomes pollution. So plastic breaks into tiny pieces, as mentioned earlier, including micro and nanoplastics. To give you an idea, microplastics are less than 5 millimeters in size, and nanoplastics are an order smaller than that. They've been found at the peak of Mount Everest and the deepest part of the Mariana Trench in the ocean, over Mount Fuji, inside people and wildlife and tissues. In the ocean, they've been found, the little pieces essentially become tiny Petri dishes, and the chemicals that are mixed with those little tiny pieces of plastic mix with the ocean water and with each other, and they interact with the air and the sunlight, and they create new chemicals. We honestly don't know how many. One researcher found as many as 878 new chemicals, some of which are unknown, and we don't really understand what they're doing. In Canada, researchers found that microplastics worsened storm events, making them wetter and longer, and changing the speed at which they travel over the land. Micro and nanoplastics have been found in people and wildlife, and I've already skipped to the next slide. Sorry about that. And all tissues, including fetuses and brains. So you're actually looking at an exponential curve. This is for worldwide plastic production. this happens to be millions of metric tons. So you can see way back here in 1950, there was hardly anything. And as we go forward through in time from that point, the doubling starts happening faster. So for example, between 1999 and 2016, which is 17 years, the production of plastic doubled. And from 2018, right here, to 2033, that's 15 years. So that's a shorter period. It's expected to double again. Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory released a really important climate impact of primary plastic production in 2024. They found that global plastic production in 2019 accounted for 5.3% of greenhouse gas emissions. So that's primarily from extraction of petroleum from the earth, and then through the process of producing the primary polymers, plastic polymers. This is apart from large land action like deforestation or huge construction projects. By 2050, the growth forecast expects that will grow the emission of greenhouse gases from the production of plastic, and it will emit as much as somewhere between 21 and 31% of all greenhouse gas emissions. This doesn't account for greenhouse gas emissions from the use of plastic or its disposal. A huge chunk of that produced plastic, 26%, comes from two types of polyethylene and polypropylene. And it turns out that three of these particular polymers, low-density polyethylene, linear low-density polyethylene, and polypropylene, are primary plastics in artificial turf. This last item I'll discuss in a future slide. Okay. You don't have to study this closely. This is really just to show how plastics moves through the environment. It moves with water. It gets tossed into the air. It's put into landfills. Microplastics can just settle out over the earth and be taken up by plants and also animals that eat those plants. So this sort of explains why plastics are found worldwide in everything. Building on this, there have been two interesting studies. There were ocean researchers who, and I saw a picture of this. The researchers are in the water and scuba gear and stuff, and they've got this device that they're holding over a dolphin mouth when the dolphin mouth is open. And they found that dolphins, in particular, inhale pollutants and exhale them back into the air. And on the right, there's this wonderful diagram showing how ocean action. So once you've got all of those plastics washed into the ocean and they move around with wave action, they get tossed into the air. And that's one of the ways that they move around in the world. In a totally different discipline, other researchers, medical researchers, took slides of from mortuaries, and they took a close look to see where micro and nanoplastics were found. And essentially, they found them everywhere in the human body, including kidney, liver, brain. Other studies have shown that in the brain, people who have dementia have a higher degree of microplastics, statistically speaking. There was also a study in 2024 where medical researchers found a particular type of heart condition that was worsened by the presence of microplastics in arteries. Polyethylene was the predominant polymer. Polyethylene is a major part of artificial turf. Obviously, not all polyethylene is artificial turf, but it's important to understand that artificial turf, the main plastics for the green carpet are polyethylene and polypropylene. Okay. So there are a number of chemicals that are mixed with plastics. So plastics generally, when they're produced, tend to be sort of these semi-stretchy substances. Most are sort of translucent. They don't look at all like a finished product. In order to have a finished plastic product, you have to add chemicals. A number of these chemicals have been found to cause problems, and that includes decreased IQ, cognitive deficits, thyroid cancer and disease, cardiovascular disease, asthma. They affect fertility. They've been found in fetuses, and they can delay developmental growth. They can contribute to diabetes. There are just a number of things that the chemicals that are added to plastics can do, and that as a result, microplastics, it's not just the plastic, it's the chemicals that are in the plastic. Okay, so what is artificial turf? Sorry. So once again, I mentioned, so these clear round beads over here, those are the primary plastics. That's linear low density polyethylene. It might be polypropylene. It might be just plain old low density polyethylene. So obviously this looks nothing like artificial turf. You have to add things. So you have to add colorants, which before 2010 in California included a liberal dose of lead. Attorney General Jerry Brown at that point, he didn't put a complete stop to it. There's still a tiny bit of lead in some coloring in artificial turf, but it was significantly reduced, and the artificial turf industry had to pull up a number of fields and replace them. But there are also ultraviolet stabilizers, because when you've got plastic outdoors in the sunlight, it'll break down faster, so you have to add chemicals to help prevent that. These round clear beads of polyethylene are considered flammable. They melt at approximately the same temperature as a kitchen match when it's first lit. And then there are any number of other conditioners that might be in there. So some of those chemicals include this whole set of chemicals over here. Now, not every chemical in this list is found in every single artificial turf product that you might see. One of the problems is that artificial turf is produced in a number of places, and that the recipes for its production change all the time. But those recipes are proprietary, and that means that other people have to go and get samples and test them in order to find out what's in there. And all of these chemicals that you're looking at, this top list is just of PFAS chemicals. And this lower list is other, what the UN calls chemicals of concern, which either are known to cause problems or have had indications, statistical indications that they can cause problems. Turf itself, so there's several different types. If it's artificial turf in landscaping, it probably doesn't have all of these different layers. It's probably mostly just the green carpeting layer with some backing underneath there. So if you're looking at this, this is not just one piece of, part of plastic. The green blades are plastic. The backing tends to either be latex or a different kind of plastic. Sometimes there's a couple of layers together. If it's on an athletic field, there can be a pad underneath that, and that's to make the surface a little bit softer, because without it, artificial turf, when you run across it, it can be quite hard. And if it's too hard, then that can injure athletes when they fall. Grass fields, if they're maintained, don't have this problem. And that's something I'll get to later. And then you have a couple of other layers that might include drainage. So as you can see, there's a good reason why architects consider this hardscaping. So a hardscape is like concrete or stone or any number of other things that cut off the air and sunlight above the surface from the ground beneath. So this means that microorganisms underneath there die and the soil becomes dead. It no longer sequesters carbon, for example. And this is part of also the fact you've got all these layers of plastic, why they heat up in sunlight and can create an urban heat island. Okay, so this was the study that I sort of skipped past earlier. In 2023, the University of Barcelona went offshore into the ocean and into the areas of the rivers that emptied into the ocean, and they collected quite a few samples, just a lot of samples. And then they took them back to the university, and they looked through their samples, and they actually sorted them all out and tried to figure out where the plastic came from. So once they're looking at microplastics, it becomes a lot harder to identify. So they mainly focused on pieces of plastic that were slightly larger and way larger than microplastics. And what they found was that in half of all of the samples that they collected, they found artificial turf. Moreover, fully 15% of all of the samples together turned out to be artificial turf. That's a lot of artificial turf. So what else is wrong with artificial turf? So we know that the chemicals problem and the microplastics problem, that's a problem with almost every single type of plastic. Artificial turf is unique because of its changing recipes of these chemicals and everything. And it's also unique in that it's rolled out onto the ground, in the air, in the sunlight. And if you've ever put your hand on your car dash, in a hot day, you know how much plastic can heat up. The San Francisco Estuary Institute created a report for the city of Sunnyvale in 2017. And in part of that report, they actually have this Landsat photograph. This is a heat map of an area right next to the bay. I don't know if you're familiar with the Twin Creeks Sports Complex, but it's down over here. You can see that they have 10 fields, and each of these fields is in the neighborhood of 2 to 4.5 acres. So there's quite a bit of artificial turf there. And on this particular day, which was a day in September in the morning, that area was the hottest area in this heat map. This is a Google map showing where exactly the Twin Creeks Sports Complex is. It's right there on the bay. I've been to Twin Creeks Sports Complex. There are drains in these walkways between these fields, and it's really clear that any water that washes off of those fields goes directly into those drains. And guess where the drains lead to? Just right out here into the bay. Okay, so I myself own a infrared thermometer, and some other people I know also have them. And for fun, we go to artificial turf fields on warm or hot days, or even on cool days sometimes, and we take readings. So it turns out that on July 10th in 2024, you may remember this past summer, it was quite hot, that on this particular day in Sunnyvale at Fair Oaks Park, which is an area that has about 6 acres of artificial turf, the air temperature was 89 degrees. And over here, you can look at the temperature, the surface of the artificial turf. It's 151 degrees, or if I round up, 152 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's a 60-degree difference. I had another person measure, I think it's July 4th in Los Gatos. In Los Gatos, the temperature on July 4th the air temperature reached 104 degrees. And the surface of an artificial turf field there measured 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if you compare that with grass, this is actual real grass. The Fair Oaks, once you get off of the artificial turf fields, there is grass in that particular park. And you can see that the surface of the grass temperature was about 91 degrees, which is only a few degrees above the air temperature. It's important to note that once you get to 140 degrees, there's an anti-scald burn chart. Yeah, I have the URL for that down here at the bottom. If you put your hand for 3 seconds or longer on a surface, it's 140 degrees Fahrenheit, you can get a burn. You can actually get a 2nd-degree burn. So when athletes play on a day like this, if they fall and they stay down, it's no wonder that they say the surface is hot and that they don't like it. But you can also feel the heat through the soles of your shoes. I've walked across fields that have been this hot, and I can tell you, your toes get nice and warm. Another thing that can happen is, so the edges of plastic, they're plastic. So if you slide across that, across the plastic blades, you can get something called turf burn, which doesn't sound like a big deal. And usually it's an inconvenience, but it does sting and hurt. However, sometimes it can cause scarring. And worse than that, sometimes if there's bacteria on the surface of the plastic, it can get in there and cause staph or other infections. So what about other injuries? So there have been a lot of studies about athletes having lower limb injuries. So, twisted ankles, twisted knees, or falling down and, injuring themselves in other ways. Most of that data is taken from the National Football League or from professional players in soccer or other things. But there was one study done recently by Case Western University, and it's actually behind a paywall. So I had to pay to get this study, the full study. I have a copy of it. If anybody wants to look at it, I'd be glad to send you a copy. And what they did at Case Western University was they collected data from high schools about different kinds of injuries. So they did not mix their study. They did not mix the numbers from grass and from artificial turf. They studied those independently, to find out what proportion of injuries were caused by each surface. And they found that on artificial turf, student athletes, high school athletes, were 58% more likely to sustain an injury, and that the faster the game and the more turns and twists that you have to do while you play, so for example, in soccer or football, the more likely you were to be injured. So now we're going to get a little bit into recycling. The plastic, so there's a lot of artificial turf industry people will tell you, you can play on artificial turf 24 hours a day, and everything will be fine. That's not quite right. In a way, that's sort of true, because you don't have to let artificial turf grow. It's not it's not a plant, so it's not alive. It doesn't need, certain kinds of care. However, it will wear out. And if you actually play longer hours, it'll wear out faster. So this particular warranty over here, you'll notice this little section down here that says that this is warranted, and it will retain at least 50% of its pile fiber. So those are those blades of green grass, and it goes on about following conditions. But what that tells you is that those blades are going somewhere. They actually do break off, they break down. So this is Twin Creeks Sports, excuse me, not Twin Creeks. This is Fair Oaks Fields, the 6 acres I spoke about earlier in Sunnyvale. So there's the artificial turf over there. And over here is a channel that goes to the bay. And around this field, there are drains. And if you go to those drains, I realize this may not be large enough, but there are blades of artificial turf here. And there's also infill from the fields that washes into that drain. Okay, so another thing that you might be told is that, oh, well, you know, when the turf is worn out and it needs to be replaced, you know, it will be recycled. That actually is not true. There are a number of articles, including an article from several years ago in The Atlantic on how rolls of artificial turf are piling up everywhere around the country, out in fields and farmers' fields. These are just statistics about how much plastic is produced in the United States and what portion of it is recycled. So here you can actually see in 2018, it was 9%. That 9%, by the way, went down in 2019, 2020. And the reason it went down to under 5% is that some of that 9%, at that point, they were shipping worn out plastic to other countries, like China, for example. And they were saying that the plastic they shipped to those other countries was being recycled. And of course, most entities in the United States don't really have a great way to track that. So those figures were accepted. However, as we know today, that's not really true, and that those other countries, China notably, stopped receiving plastic from the United States and from the European Union. And that number went down drastically. It went down by 4%. So this is a story all by itself. So I'll try to make it short. In the city of Saratoga, actually in the school district, there was the Saratoga Los Gatos Union High School District. The Saratoga High School football field was going to be replaced with more artificial turf. So some students and a number of parents tried to get the school board to change that and have the field be made into a grass field. Unfortunately, by the time everyone found out, there had been a signed contract, so they weren't really able to change that. They were told in a board meeting that all of the turf would be recycled. So parents decided to try to follow the trucks of artificial turf, the old worn out stuff, when it was carted away on flatbed trucks. So they missed most of the shipment, but they followed the final 3 flatbed trucks, each of which had about 18 of these giant rolls of artificial turf on them. And they followed them out to San Martin, which is in Santa Clara County. And they saw that the people on the trucks just pulled the turf off the trucks and left it in the field. They went to the county of Santa Clara, and later on the county of Santa Clara told the owner of the land that the owner would be fined every day that the turf was not removed past a certain point. So I gathered that the owner was fined for a while, and then magically the artificial turf disappeared. I have no idea where it is today, but clearly it's not going where even board members are being told that it goes. Okay, so this is a little bit more. We're going to sort of switch to the fields themselves. If you've been to an artificial turf field, sometimes it's behind a fence, but there's always a sign up telling you what you can and can't do. And there are always like a whole series of like things that you shouldn't be doing. You know, you shouldn't have a cigarette on the field. You shouldn't bring food. You shouldn't have anything that you poke into the ground. So these are all actions that you can't do, things you can't do on an artificial turf field. You certainly couldn't fire, a rocket into the air. You can't bring your pets because if they, mess, or if a goose, a set of geese land on the field and create a problem, they have harsh chemicals that they need to clean those things off with, because artificial turf doesn't contain any of its own bacteria. Natural grass has a whole suite of different kinds of bacteria, and chances are if a dog does something on the field, you clean it up, but you don't clean it up perfectly, the bacteria on the grass itself will take care of that. It's not a guarantee, but it's likely to happen. You can't roll anything across the turf because you might make a dent in it, and that might eventually result in a tear. You certainly can't poke any poles into the ground. You can't bring your chairs, especially if they have poles. You can't put tents. You can't bring any food, only water bottles. So, is there an alternative for these situations? It's like, well, this might be a good point to mention that I'm also a member of the California Native Plant Society. So I can tell you with certainty that there are alternatives. If you're talking about landscaping, California native plants themselves and others, there are many drought tolerant versions, and especially the California native plants have grown in California for ages. So they're used to the weird California climate cycles that we have, where it's too dry and hot for a while, and then it's too wet for a while, and that sort of thing. There are all sorts of plants, and they needn't be grass. There are shrubs and flowers and perennials. Now, if you're talking about an athletic field, you can actually grow grass. And recently, and this is something else that artificial turf salespeople tend not to mention, there's a whole suite of grasses that have been developed over the past 20 years, specifically for the Western United States, where it's drier and you have to care more about the water that you use. It's also a good place to mention that you can water grass with reclaimed and recycled water, but you can't use that on artificial turf. So on artificial turf, if it gets too hot and you want to play on it, the advice is to water it down to cool the turf off. Of course, that water will evaporate, so you have to do that periodically throughout a game. It's been calculated that eventually, if you play a number of games, you're going to use as much water on hot days, on a number of hot days, that eventually you're going to use enough water that you might as well have had grass there. Also, you need to use drinking water, potable water, on artificial turf, because the minerals and salts that are left in reclaimed water can cause the artificial turf to degrade faster. Okay, so this is just a little bit more about that. On the left, there's just some examples of plants that you can grow. And by the way, you can even grow grass in California. There are a few native grasses. So this is for landscaping. Just this bent grass, it's really lovely. You can let it grow and flop over and look like a meadow, or you can mow it and have it look more like a regular lawn. But this is not grass that you would walk across a lot. This won't withstand heavy traffic, but it will withstand light traffic. So it's perfectly fine for yards if somebody wishes to use it. So here we get to sports fields. So these particular sports fields over here that we're looking at, they're all grass fields. And they're all in Massachusetts, and some of them have been in place since 2002, and now it's 2025, so that's for a long time. So they add some seed, and they amend the soil, and they follow organic growing practices. So essentially, they're doing organic farming for a grass field. And they found that although initially, there is a cost for starting, that over time, the environment, the sort of grass environment itself helps take care of itself, and that those costs go down. They also have, so they have charts that go with this, and I can produce those charts that show that you actually can play for quite a few hours on grass fields, even after rain and other circumstances. Can you just stomp on them night and day? No. On the other hand, you won't have to rip the whole thing up every 10 years and redo it. So there are all sorts of charts purporting that they're going to compare the costs of grass and artificial turf. I like this chart because the city of San Jose staff actually went and researched this themselves and produced this chart. So it's from a while ago, so you'd have to run some inflation figures on here. But I believe these numbers would hold true if you add, I don't know, 3 or 4% every year and come up to 2025. So they didn't accept a chart or a table that was handed to them, by people from industry or even from grass producers. They went out and figured this out themselves. And so what they found is that this particular column, if you go down here, you can see that all of these numbers are less than all of these numbers. They also split it out by numbers that the artificial turf industry likes to use, like cost per hour of field use, cost per participant, so player hour of field use. When you go out 20 years, you'll notice that you suddenly have this cost right here that you don't have over here. And the reason is that's a surface replacement cost. So basically, one of the ways the artificial turf company games their tables and their figures is that they separate capital expenses out from operating expenses. And when you do that, replacement of artificial turf every 8 to 10 or 12 years or whatever you're doing magically disappears because it's a capital expense. So using the numbers from the chart before, which again are from 2011, if you invested a certain amount of money for over 10 years, you can either install some plastic fields and then you'll have to replace them for more money, or you can actually renovate an existing field in a lot of cases. You don't necessarily have to start from scratch and scrape off the current grass and everything. You can start with what you've got. You can renovate or install and properly maintain many more grass fields. This particular grass field is a football field that was installed in 2023, I believe, and it's in Manteca. And it's Bermuda grass. And it was designed specifically for the Western United States. Over here on the left, on Facebook, not too long after the parents went to follow those trucks, somebody found this ad on Facebook. It's a marketplace ad. And it says, hey, they've got rolls of used football turf for sale. And it's in Pescadero, and they're showing, hey, it came from some school in Saratoga. And I mean, I don't know what to say about this, but I would not call this recycling. You might call it repurposing, but you're repurposing a worn out product. And sadly, people who might buy this are probably folks who have no idea about the chemicals or things that are in the product. And they may have, they may want it because it costs less in their mind, it costs less money than other options. So I like this particular slide because I keep adding to it. So these are places where plastic turf has either been prohibited or localities have declared moratoriums. So most of these localities, and that includes Millbrae and San Marino, started with a moratorium on artificial turf. So what they did was they voted to have a moratorium on new installations of artificial turf throughout their cities. And in the case of Millbrae and San Marino, that included landscaping for homes, not only landscaping for city-owned property. And then they basically waited. They said, we're just going to do this for a couple of years. You know, we can change our minds. Let's see how it goes and what people think. Lo and behold, a couple of years later, they were able to make these bans permanent, these moratoriums permanent. And they didn't have like people storming City Hall, you know, when they did this. So here are some places that have moratoriums right now. So, you know, there's cities in Massachusetts. In 2024, Colorado went after landscaping. They have an exemption for sports fields, but for all landscaping, they're prohibiting, and they include artificial turf as in the non-functional category. And then there are teams that have decided they won't play in artificial turf. The most recent is the Premier Men's Soccer League in the Netherlands has declared that they will not play in artificial turf. In the European Union, so this is a little wishy-washy. They enacted a ban, they say, on sales of products containing intentionally, so intentionally is a wishy-washy word, but intentionally added microplastics. You know, so that's a little weird because, you know, all plastic is potentially microplastics because it breaks down. But what they meant was that they would ban products where tiny pieces of plastic are added at the beginning of the product's life. So this particular ban included, you know, the so-called infill layer of artificial turf. And as you probably know, at the end of January, Santa Clara County is going to vote on an ordinance that may prohibit artificial turf on county-owned property. And Sunnyvale City Council is considering a similar measure. I have more, but I've got to stop sometime. So I'll stop here and I'll stop the share. If there are questions where I have a few slides that address something that I haven't mentioned, I may share again.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. Very enlightening and sobering presentation. So I just wanted to kind of finish up. I did a little research on our artificial turf fields in Menlo Park. Currently, Hillview Middle School has an artificial turf field, and Kelly Park in the Bellhaven community has an artificial turf field. And I think there might be one other park in the city that has artificial turf.
Flood Park.
Yeah, Flood Park will be artificial turf, or maybe it already is. It's in, that's on county land, but still within our city. Nevertheless, just little bits of information about Kelly Park. It's interesting when you go there, there is the sign like Susan mentioned, and I found it interesting that said that this field can get hot on warm, sunny days. The warm, sunny days that you want to be outside on a field, be careful. And then, you know, just in sort of walking around the facility, this field is set to be replaced with artificial turf, but it's a very degraded surface, and just walking on it, it's very hard. I can't imagine falling down on that surface. Anecdotally, I talked to a couple people that were playing soccer on the field at the time, and I asked them, you know, do you prefer artificial turf or natural grass? So first person I asked said, I definitely prefer natural grass, and he showed me a turf burn on his leg. The second person I asked said that he actually prefers artificial turf because he had a bad experience on a poorly maintained natural grass field with sort of like twisting his ankle. And I said, well, what would you prefer, artificial grass or well-maintained natural grass? I said, oh, well-maintained natural grass. So just a couple little anecdotal stories on them. And then as I walked around the facility, if you can go to the next slide, it will be hard to see like Susan's was, but take me for my word. The green that you see on the track, those are loose blades. The next picture to the right is this field in Kelly Park currently has they call it tire crumb. So it's basically old car tires crumbled up, which are full of chemicals. And that is just everywhere. The other pictures show how it's in other places. It's widespread. Everywhere you look, these blades and crumb are degrading and spreading. And then if you look out a little bit further, if you go to the next slide, just off of the field are the parking lots and the storm drains. And you can see that that field is getting into our storm system. And so that's I think I have some stats later on how old that field is, but it's degrading and it's getting into our stormwater. If you go up to the Hillview Middle School, I did a similar search, and this is a field that's jointly owned, or there's a joint agreement between the school and the city. The city actually helped pay for the field. It was first installed in 2013, and it was replaced in 2022. And even though it's only a couple years old, I was still able to find evidence of degrading, getting into the drainage system. It looks like the Hillview field has a little, maybe more robust drainage system, but it's hard to know what you don't see. So, and just I wanted to show examples of how far the degraded field is getting away from the actual field itself. So yeah, just real quickly, Kelly Park is again scheduled for replacement to be artificial turf. It's about a $2 million cost per city documents. They're pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered. I'm not sure that there's much we can do on that one, but I would encourage anybody in the public that is concerned about this to raise it with their council member. And I can't promise anything, but at least we can make folks aware of the situation. Hillview field again was recently replaced it cost about 1.44 million, and the city paid for half of that cost. That field uses a different type of the original field used the tire crumb rubber like Kelly Park. The new field uses more I guess a greener product of sand and olive cores. So again, and it's newer, but it's already degrading. And then quickly, the city has a park and recreation department, and they have a facilities master plan. And I just went through that briefly and pulled out some things that I thought were interesting. There's guidelines about the parks and recs facilities. They are, recommended to look at the long-term cost to operate and maintain the facility or park. So I think, when you look at the numbers Susan presented, there's a very good argument to say that natural grass is a better and more cost-effective solution. Parks are to be, and it mentions that an environmentally sustainable park and facility should be less cost to maintain. So I think there may be, a good reason to take a look at that. And I think that might be this understanding that, there's no maintenance required with artificial turf, and there's no water required. As Susan mentioned, there are times where you need water and it needs to be potable water. So just something to consider there. The guidelines say that the goals of the city Parks and Rec need to align with the climate action plan, the green infrastructure stormwater plan, and the community zero waste plan. I think there's arguments to be made that artificial turf goes against all of those. And I just highlighted the fact that the park should have recycling and composting receptacles and hydration stations, which is something that Commissioner Headley will touch on. The guidelines are that parks can act as carbon sinks and flood mitigation. Artificial turf is completely the opposite on both. It degrades the soil so that it can sequester less carbon, and it hurts biodiversity, which sequesters carbon, and it causes flood issues because it just runs off the surface. It doesn't penetrate our groundwater like a natural grass field does. And then there's recommendations in that facilities master plan, which is the plan was finalized in 2019. So they have recommendations on Kelly Park, which again, that ship may have sailed. But concerningly, they say that we should consider artificial turf at Burgess Park. And so we'll get to the recommendations later, but there's a set of slides that I wasn't able to get into this presentation. Susan and one of her colleagues helped me do a heat map of Menlo Park, specifically Burgess Park, Kelly Park, and Hillview Park. And not surprisingly, if you look at it, there are red areas over Kelly Park and Hillview Middle School, and over Burgess Park, it's this, similar temperature to the surrounding area. So it's very clear that the natural grass field is not a heat island, and the artificial turf fields are. And then just one other topic here, it's related, it's regard to landscaping. There's this practice of using plastic weed barrier in residential and commercial landscaping, and it's overwhelmingly made from plastic. It's not biodegradable, it's not recyclable, it degrades over time. It, like artificial turf, has to be replaced every 8 to 10 years. The reason it's used is they feel that it will help prevent weeds, which that may be true in the short term, but as you look at it over the long term, the tough weeds can actually grow through the fabric. Weeds can grow on top of the plastic landscaping carpet. And then when you have that fabric there, it makes removing weeds more difficult. And then when you do remove the weeds, you damage the landscaping fabric, creating more microplastics. It then just talking about, what that plastic does to the soil. It degrades the soil, it prevents the sun, air, and water and nutrients from reaching the soil. There's no ecosystem under the soil that's healthy as it relates to earthworms and insects. And the soil under it becomes compacted and dry and hardened and unhealthy. And then the chemicals from that fabric get into the soil and into our water systems. And there are alternatives that are not made out of plastic. And then this last slide, it's just kind of speaks to the issue. This was a study done by Cal Poly last year. They called it a plasticulture study. There's so much plastic in our agriculture system that they came up with a name for it. So the UN soil plastic contamination is an environmental health and food security threat. These plastic mulches, these films are the largest source of agricultural plastic pollution. They cover 25 million acres of farmland globally, producing 6.7 million tons of contamination. Again, it degrades the soil. They tested 12 different fields across 5 different farms in California that employ the best practices. All 12 fields exhibited evidence of micro and macro plastic contamination. The macroplastic, there was a negative correlation with soil health. They weren't really able to measure the damage that microplastics could do, but wherever there was macroplastic, there was microplastic. And they found that this practice is responsible for 3.5% of all global plastic pollution, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 14 million metric tons. So that same sort of practice is being used locally in our landscaping projects from time to time. So after all of this, our committee came up with some recommendations. We would recommend that our city adopt an ordinance prohibiting the use and installation of synthetic grass and artificial turf within the city of Menlo Park. It would apply to all properties and all property types. I've looked at the city of Millbrae ordinance. I think it's a great model for our city to consider. It bans the use and installation, and it does allow existing installations to remain in place for up to 4 years, but they have to meet conditions. If they're starting to show degradation, then and of course, with degradation comes pollution, then those fields or artificial installations would need to be removed under that city ordinance. So I think that's a great model for our city to consider. Another recommendation is do not replace Burgess Park with artificial grass, keep it natural grass. And when these, this is not a recommendation, but as other opportunities come to the city, well, the first recommendation would cover it if we ban it altogether. We don't have to worry about future installations. And then ask the city to consult with experts in order to implement organic maintenance programs for natural grass athletic fields. You can start with soil testing. As Susan said, there are ways to sort of rejuvenate existing grass fields. You don't necessarily have to start over at ground zero. And then as it relates to the sort of landscaping fabric, we would recommend that we educate the community about the harms associated with that practice and maybe even consider a ban on plastic forms of landscape grass, landscape fabric. And then just educating the community on alternatives for natural and artificial, to both natural and artificial lawns. In terms of like, you don't necessarily, let's not allow artificial lawns, but even natural lawns do require water, and there's more natural ways in our climate to decorate your landscape with water. Our city actually has a water efficient landscape ordinance that people need to adhere to. I had a couple of notes on that, which are they give folks different ways to adhere to the ordinance, much like building codes. There's a prescriptive path where if you do this, you're good. There's also like a performance path where if you meet certain water budgets, then you can do different things as long as you still meet the water budget. And there's restrictions on how much grass you can put in your property. 25% is the maximum for residential, and commercials aren't allowed to put any grass. It all needs to be natural, drought tolerant, native sort of landscaping. And there's a lot of resources available out there. Some are highlighted on our city's website, which is great. Folks can go out and get a free landscape analysis on ways to reduce their water usage and get more native plants. There's a rebate program called Lawn Be Gone. There's rain barrel rebates. The Lawn Be Gone program is for certain, I think Menlo Park has 2 different water providers. But if you're in the right one, then there's like a $3 per square foot rebate that you can get to replace your lawn with more native plants. And then in Bellhaven, there's a thing called the Community Development Fund, and there's options for mini grants that folks can get for up to $1,500 for upfront costs of lawn transformation. So just encouraging the city to conduct outreach and make folks aware of those opportunities. So that is our presentation on artificial turf and landscape fabrics. Are there any clarifying questions for me or for Susan from the EPC?
Wow,
Yeah,
that was impressive, really impressive. Well, somebody,
You need clarifying questions?
was very thorough.
Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment on this item?
Sure, let me open up public comment. If you're in the room, you can grab a comment card and hand it back to me. And if you are online, you can raise your hand. And if you are calling in, you can press *9 and we'll be able to mute you. I do see a hand raised online. And then we have 1 comment card in the room. So we can start with the card in the room with Brian Schmidt.
Good evening, folks. Brian Schmidt with Menlo Park. I just wanted to mention that a number of years ago, actually many years ago, I wrote a white paper analyzing the relationship between California Environmental Quality Act and compliance with the stormwater permit. And in that paper, I argued that cities were incorrectly relying on compliance with the stormwater permit as equating with compliance with CEQA. And particularly in the issue of cumulative impacts, the stormwater permits does not eliminate cumulative impacts, which cities are obligated to address under CEQA. And in that paper, I argue that for mitigating CEQA cumulative impacts, you can collect a fee, which normally it's a little bit different for other types of mitigations. So that's something that could be applicable to dealing with this issue, collect a fee for cumulative impacts in developments, and then use it for something good, one of which might be to address artificial turf. It could also be used for other things such as reducing impervious surface coverage, which would slow down the rate at which microplastics collect into the water systems. So I will dig that thing out and get that to the EPC.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a hand raised online. Any other comment cards in the room?
I mean, I have a question. More.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we'll go to our next public comment in the room. We have Doreen Martinez.
No, it's just more on, I mean, it's a shame that if Burgess Park was already. If there's new turf that's about to be laid. Kelly Park, sorry, Kelly Park, I think that nothing can be done. I mean, is there really no, can we not? Bring it up.
Termination fee.
Yeah, or even a hold, or, I mean, a moratorium, a pause, given compliance with some of the code, some of the items that you highlighted. Which buys time to be able to then raise further issues.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment.
And then we have one comment online. Ben, I see your hand raised and I'm going to unmute you right now for your 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Ben.
Yes, we can hear you, Ben. Go
Hey,
ahead.
everyone. Hi, everyone. Ben Iriff. I'm living in District 4. I actually attended this meeting just to learn a little bit about the EQC. I'm really excited to learn about what you guys are working on. And thanks to Brian also for encouraging me to join. Hi, Brian. I actually wanted to add a comment about this. I didn't realize you guys were going to be talking about the synthetic turf, but I wanted to give a couple data points. One, I grew up in New Jersey, and a couple of years ago, my 90-year-old mother banded together with her neighbors to work with the city of Princeton, New Jersey, to block the installation of AstroTurf on a number of public parks there. And the interesting data point was that the soccer clubs in New Jersey, of which there are some very large ones, were essentially collaborating with the AstroTurf companies to go into cities like Princeton and get the cities to install AstroTurf all around New Jersey. And the benefit to the soccer clubs was they could run many, many more practices and make a lot more money. They were charging thousands of dollars per child that take, in their clubs per season. And they weren't actually paying the cities anything for it on top of that. So it was really interesting. In the end, they decided to ban this. So Susan, you can add Princeton, New Jersey to your list of towns that have banned the use of AstroTurf. And of course, there's lots and lots of health concerns my kids went through, or my son went through Hillview. The second thing, and there were lots of concerns about the use of AstroTurf there. The second one is just having been a planning commissioner for many years and observing a lot of what's going on in the city nowadays about some of the newer plans that are coming through. I think it'd be really important to have some sort of an outreach program just to let residents know about this concept of outlawing the use of turf. There are a lot of neighbors that use it. So just sort of softening the process here a little bit, making sure there's some way to communicate with people before this happens. And that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Hey, do you mind sharing your last name for the record?
Yes, it's Iriff, spelled E as in Edward, I-R-E as in Edward, F as in Frank.
Great, thank you. And then I see Susan's hand raised, as well as, let me see if there's anyone else, or that's Ben's hand. Okay, so we just have Susan's, if we want to start with Susan to jumpstart the discussion, and we can close public comment. Okay,
Sounds good.
so I'll return the meeting to you, and then Susan, it sounds like you were able to unmute yourself, so you can start our discussion.
Yeah, I really appreciated Ben's comment, and he's right, actually. There are, so even if you talk to players individually, you'll hear about heat and about turf burn. If you talk to head coaches of league teams, they tend to favor artificial turf. At the Santa Clara County board meetings, the research and development director, I believe is his title, from TenCate, which is one of the two major artificial turf manufacturers. One is TenCate and the other is Field Turf. TenCate is based in the Netherlands, and this research and development director flew from the Netherlands to Santa Clara County to appear at two things, at the board meeting in Santa Clara County. And also he tried to meet with the different politicians, the supervisors there. And then he also went to the Sunnyvale City Council, which is holding a meeting that day, and made a public comment. I think that's pretty wild to have, the research and development director of an industry, fly halfway around the world to come to our little corner of the globe to specifically talk about, how horrible it would be to ban artificial turf. But also you'll hear people say, oh, this is an equity issue because folks who are lower income or have issues won't be able to go out and run and play on the soccer field. And so I just, for my own edification, came up with a list of things that you can do that don't involve artificial turf or any specific kind of field. You can jump rope, you can do competitive jump rope, you can play volleyball, you could do tug of war, team style dodgeball, capture the flag, cardio workouts, dance routines, competitive dance routines, parkour. I mean, it's not as though the only thing in the world that will prevent, sometimes they say obesity is soccer. And I just like people to keep that in mind. Oh, one more thing. While I'm thinking about it, we all sadly have Los Angeles in our minds. So I've seen videos, news videos in our area. They're from 2018 and 2019. They're still up on the web, showing artificial turf burning. On one of those videos, the neighborhood was cleared out because of potential toxins in the smoke. So while the firefighters were able to put out the fires nearby, on the plants, like the grass fields that were nearby, essentially there wasn't very much they could do with the turf. They just had to wait for it to burn. So that's another thought.
Thank you, Susan. So, again, EQC discussion, I just want to give everyone, each commissioner, an opportunity to say their thoughts and ideas and ideas on the recommendations. So we'll just go around the room. Commissioner Headley, would you like to start?
Well, I was on the subcommittee, so I'm in support of the recommendations that you've laid out, so I'll let other people have time to speak.
Okay, Commissioner Pellegrini Yopar.
Do you want to just show on the slides, the two slides of the recommendations, just to think about it for a second, just to see it, right?
For you. of
So
course.
there are two, right? There's the one about.
Yeah. Turf and landscape fabric.
Right.
Sorry, there's a
Yeah,
lag.
so I'm all in favor of that one, but I think that informing people about the trade-offs, it makes a big difference, because people think about, oh, this is going to save water.
Mhm.
So just raising out this issue, and then on the field, talking about the injuries that are coming from that, that's a way to get parents to react to it very quickly. So I'm certainly on support on the things that do this, such as narrowing in here. Some of the landscape issues get more complicated, right? But some of them are pretty easy. And the next one, the one about ban on plastic forms of landscape fabric, that seems trickier to. But education and the fields that we have control over, yeah. And I agree about the Kelly Park. I think that's unfortunate that we cannot do anything.
Great, thank you.
I mean, I fully support the ordinance prohibiting synthetic grass. I mean, I grew up here playing soccer in all the fields around here. I tore my meniscus playing on a turf field. Couldn't play soccer again after that. So I thoroughly despise turf fields, synthetic grass turf fields. I remember when the Hillview Field was installed in 2013. I was at middle school there and definitely face planted into those rocks quite a few times and learning that there's like lead is still allowed and the coloring of all that is yeah, that was pretty daunting to hear this evening. Yeah, so you convinced me. You convincing that support.
Great, thanks for your comments. Commissioner Kissel?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, but I think there's a huge amount of communication and engagement we would have to do before we try to implement this, given all the other things for seeing wherever we want to make changes. People are just, for anybody who didn't attend the city council meeting last night, that went till midnight, people are just resistant to change. And so, whether it's the gas leak blowers or this, and there are going to be people who push back, and even in programs. So we did the Cash for Grass. I don't know what it was called at the time, but we were actually told, I'm trying to remember the specifics. We had to have 25% grass. So we were going to put artificial turf in because we thought about saving water. We had no idea. So several years ago, and there was no education at all. Right. So here's a perfect time when residents are coming to the city saying, I want to participate in this program, to educate them. Because we would have, there were two issues for us. One was it was pretty expensive to do high quality astroturf or whatever. But then there was something that they said about, well, I think originally we were going to get rid of everything and put like decomposed granite and drought tolerant plants, but they said you needed to have at least 25%, or maybe with maximum 25%, but they said you needed to have grass.
That was the city?
Yeah. Well, whoever it was it might have been the Water Bureau who was offering this rebate that we couldn't not have grass, which I thought was very interesting, and nobody explained why. It's like, okay, well, so we got drought tolerant, no mow grass, and it's been fine. And we also re-irrigated it with, instead of spray irrigation, drip irrigation. But I mean, there's a lot of education I think that's gonna have to happen to, so that otherwise, we're gonna face lawsuits and, there's gonna be all kinds of pushback, because we've been telling people for 10 years, conserve water. Right, and so now we're saying, well, no, actually, you need to put in grass, you need to water your grass. So I think we just have to think about all the benefits and all the concerns about not doing it, the carrots and the sticks, before we try to implement something.
Do we have data about how much, what's the difference in water usage between, on a soccer field between artificial turf and grass?
It was in her model, in her financial model, it actually said 10 years.
Okay, I missed that part.
But it'll make some assumptions about how much water you need to do to clean it or cool it or whatever. And so people will,
And with the drought tolerant grasses that are now available, it shouldn't be as thirsty as the grasses maybe we had when we were growing up.
but then, for the issue about, the playing field time and,
Yeah.
we need to be able to convince folks, whether it's Kelly Park or Burgess Park, that it's better to do. I guess what I'm experiencing is we can't just lead with environmental stories. Like a lot of the population, even here in Menlo Park, unless there's an economic or a safety reason, right, they're gonna go with whatever is the most economic choice. And if the perception is that AstroTurf is a more long-term economic choice, if they're not aware of all these other issues, they're gonna be very resistant. But I learned so much today that, you
Same.
package that out.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for Susan's presentation and
Yeah.
for John inviting her in. And I feel like now that we have it recorded, we can share that widely and
Yeah.
maybe we create some clips, maybe someone on the comms team starts to get the word out. Because people are individually making decisions about bringing this kind of stuff into their homes, really. And so I think there's an opportunity to get some word out now while we decide what we want to do and potentially bring something in front of city council. So I think there's a great opportunity here.
Well, thanks for everyone's input. I think in interest of time and wrapping up this agenda item, we should consider making a motion I think it could be as simple as just making our first recommendation, the motion. Adopting an ordinance prohibiting the use and installation of synthetic grass. And then I would kind of want Rachel's input on this or others, but you know, in recommending that to the city council, that begins the process, and then that begins the whole outreach and awareness process to the public. So in some ways, by us recommending this, there will be inherent outreach and education along with that, should the city council choose to take on this issue. But I'm not opposed at all to adding subcomponents to our motion that, you know, recommend that there be robust outreach, that, you know, perhaps there's a 1-year moratorium or something that we can get something on the books soon to prevent large installations of this, this issue. And then also recommending that the city do some, you know, work with a consultant to understand the natural grass options that are available and how they can organically maintain their existing grass fields. And then on the landscaping fabric, I understand that that's a little trickier. And perhaps maybe our recommendation there is that, you know, that we just try to educate the community about the sort of ineffectiveness of landscape fabric and the harms that come with it.
What about the spelling out, the. So, I'm sorry, like D215 is for all properties and all property types. We could just spell out within there, the properties are owned by the city. Let's start by saying, but the city should do that, and then all the other ones too. Because I think that my first reaction would be if one of our neighbors just installed a bunch of artificial grass, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, why should I do it if the city is not doing it? Right? So we're not doing it for Cali Park. Right, Cali Park is a case that we would have to grandfather it or something like that, right? So I mean, it sounds like the first step is for the city to do it. We want everybody to do it, but we for sure want the city to do it. I
Agreed.
mean, I'm not saying don't do the other one, but like spell out that city should do it for sure. We want everybody up to do it, but we have control over the city.
Yeah, just to clarify, the recommendation was that the ordinance applied to the city, all its operations and everybody. So it's sort of like we're all in this together. It's not just the city imposing it on residents or businesses.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to make a point that if somebody wants to say, okay, well, applying to everybody is too far reaching. At the very least, the city should do it.
Yeah, I am.
You know what I mean? Part of this, the whole reaction we have had about the downtown housing element.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, sometimes it feels like if we ask, we have to be very careful about how we ask things to make sure that we don't go too fast.
I think it is important to role model. And
Yeah,
this is
right.
also such a big deal that I wouldn't want, you know, Tom Cabot used to talk a lot about sequencing and how that causes change to happen too slowly. So my recommendation, if we were to make a recommendation to, you know, city council, is ban it all, whether we own it or not, whether it's individual homes, the schools, even the county. You know, like within, if it's within the city limits of Menlo Park, that we have whatever kind of process to extricate it over time and not add anything new, and then the city would be following the same rules as everybody else. And if we want to do something about Cali Park, that might be people individually reaching out to city council members to pull that from the plan. But my understanding is that a lot of work has already been done, and it sounds like it's well underway, so it might take some extraordinary effort to stop that if we felt individually strongly.
So is Mill Bay the only city in the Bay Area that's doing this at this point?
Well, Susan mentioned Santa Clara County and City of Sunnyvale are considering such ordinance.
Yeah.
I think this county of Santa Clara is meeting at the end of this month, right, Susan?
Yes, they're going to vote on the ordinance Tuesday, January 28th. So their meetings start at 9:30 in the morning. They have agendas that go 30 and 40 items long. We have no knowledge yet exactly where on the agenda this will be put, but we're hoping it'll be a time considered item, which means that they'll at least tell us that there's a certain time before it won't be heard, so that we can bring in all of our people making public comments.
And it is a structure like the Millbrae, the total ban?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Is it also a total ban?
So Millbrae went through a period of, actually, they had an initial moratorium that went for 1 year. Then they extended the moratorium for 2 years. And then they made a final decision in 2023 to make the moratorium permanent. And that's when the ordinance appeared online. It's really easy to find. They have a very clear ordinance. You just type into your Google search engine, Millbrae ban artificial turf, and it'll pop right up for you.
So the proposal is to do something that structured like that it goes with moratoriums progressively.
Well, can I make a motion or? Yeah, so I make a motion that we adopt it, just take the exact wording from the first bullet. On the artificial grass recommendations. And then I welcome any amendments to that motion or a second.
I'm wondering if we should, I like the idea of making it effective immediately, you know, as soon as the city council approves it. Or city-owned property. But I'm wondering if we should also put in there, you know, provide a grace period for education before having it go in effect for non-city properties.
Help me understand. Why? Or how that would benefit anyone.
So let's, I mean, I think we want the city to move as fast as they can, and so they say, great, you know, we can get this through in 3 months. I don't think we're gonna get commercial and residential support within 3 months without a lot of backlash. So if we give an additional 6 months or whatever the right amount of time is, and city staff can tell us what that amount of time is to do the outreach and education so that people are not blindsided by this. Like, I think for the gas leak blowers, we gave like a year notice or something, even more, maybe, I can't remember, it was long, it was a good period of time. So I'd just be hesitant of trying to do it too quick. I would build in a buffer for outreach and education for non-city owned properties.
I guess,
Isn't that essentially what the Millbrae process did?
That's not what's in our proposal.
I know, but I'm just trying to clarify. So I failed to read all of this before presentation. I was paying too much attention to the.
Yeah, just to clarify, my recommended motion does not recommend a moratorium period,
Yeah, I
which is
understand.
what the city of Millbrae did.
Yes,
But, you know, my recommendation is that we recommend to the council what we think is the best for the community and the environment. And this council can then decide how much time they want to allow the ordinance to when it goes into effect or whatever. I think we all recognize the issues of installing artificial grass, and we think it would be best to not do it anymore as soon as possible. And so that would be my recommendation. And then I would leave it up to the council and staff to sort out the timing and the details.
yeah, I appreciate it. I know that's the way you think about these things. I tend not to think that way. I think I tend to give some time for selling the concept. Yeah,
That's fair.
I have a thought on that though, and how it's different from the Zelly ordinance. Is with the Zelly ordinance, we were requiring people who don't have a lot of resources, like assuming gardeners don't have a lot of resources, to go out and buy new equipment so that they could continue to do their job. So it's an expensive outlay of capital for them. Whereas this is people individually making decisions about a very expensive capital outlay to do AstroTurf. So they're considering something that's really quite expensive upfront. They could do something much less expensive with native plants. They could just leave it bare, let their grass die, whatever, with no capital outlay. So we're not forcing people to make a very expensive choice. Whereas with Zelly, we were saying you have to spend money, and that's why we gave them money to help make the switch.
Yeah, and they still don't do it, but anyhow.
Yeah, but
Um,
much less are. Now, the one thing we are asking people to do, I think, if we do this,
Yeah,
the way
but
John
they
is laid
have-
out, wait, let me finish my thought,
Yeah. but
is that,
somebody-
is that we are saying you need to replace the grass within 4 years, or if it starts to degrade. Now, that would be an expense that maybe we consider, like the timeline or extra, some support maybe with the money Brian suggested. But I think if we're asking people to spend money,
Mhm.
then maybe there's something, but if, if they're gonna spend a lot of money on
Fair
their own, they can just save their money and do something much less expensive. Sorry. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody had me making plans for doing something. And they are planning to do it this year or next year, you have to change their minds. They have already made their minds about doing something, you have to make them change their mind. It's not the money, is they
have
thought about
plans.
this thing, they need to be educated.
Yeah,
So saying, okay, now you cannot do it. They say, oh, well, it's my property.
yeah, well, I guess, like there's time between when we make a recommendation and it
Right.
goes to city council and the comms team can do all their, like they
Yeah.
did with the, You know.
Again, I'm to some degree reacting to the downtown
Yeah.
element.
just like
Uh,
wanting to
I
not
mean,
get
we
in that
have been talking
situation.
about this for
2 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew about this.
Right.
Yeah.
In November, people came and said, I only heard about this last week.
Yeah,
And they exploded.
yeah, okay, I get
So
it.
that's my context here.
Can I offer something on timing?
Mhm.
So I've thought a little bit about how we take items from the EQC and deliver them up to council, since it's not always a linear path. So there's a couple of different, I think, touch points with council that may dictate the timing. So one is the work plan development and kind of goal setting. This could be an opportunity for the public to make comment if the city council wants to take it on for the year. That's kind of the time where they would fit it into their agenda. We don't have that scheduled yet for this year. Last year it was in March. So that's one touch point. Another one is the EQC report out in the summer. Reporting on the activities from last fiscal year and then getting into what we should do for 24-25. That's a good opportunity too, to get direction. And that enables then city council to direct staff to do all the outreach and kind of studying and all the things that you're suggesting we do to kind of operationalize this. And so from today's recommendation, I can't go off and start doing a bunch of work on this. And so it'd have to be kind of one of those touch points with council. So thinking about March-ish or
Mm.
July-ish.
You know what's gonna
Yeah.
happen in March?
What?
They're gonna come back with the RFQ responses for downtown parking, housing.
Which might,
It's gonna like take every ounce of energy in the entire.
it
city
might
council.
delay work plan. I don't have that crystal ball, but that's good context.
I mean, that's when they said it's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Good,
March,
good
April.
memory.
So I'm coming around to John's point of view now, rather than, and I think we've had some of these conversations in the past about how aggressive should we be in our recommendations to the city council versus how does the city council then choose to implement our recommendations? And what John has been advocating, and I'm coming around to, is we should make the recommendations that are the best for the environment and let the city council and staff determine the execution mechanism and timing. So I'm with you initially, but thinking about it now, the reality is, even if we make this recommendation, it doesn't mean that, next month, the city council is gonna pass an ordinance and people are gonna be up in arms. So, and if anything, I think the city council has learned their lesson about, meaningful change requires, residential and business engagement. So I would stick with The one I do have a little bit, I wrestle with is after 4 years, have to replace it. Because these are expensive, investments and people are expecting to get 10, 15 years. And if you say, you just spent $20,000 and now you're gonna have to rip it out after 4 years.
Yeah.
People are really gonna be angry. So that one I'm a little hesitant to recommend, but I'm happy to hear the discussion from others.
Yeah, thank you. I would say that, the motion I made probably was incomplete, because I think it probably does need to include everything, including the sub bullets of that. And I'm comfortable making that motion. Again, I feel like that Millbrae ordinance is an excellent model for our city. And, again, I feel good about making that motion and then letting the city council and the rest of the city staff determine next steps. So that's my motion, and I definitely appreciate everyone's input, and
Stand by it.
yeah, standing by the motion. And, but I'm, yeah.
Mayor
please.
Rickett, I think it could be more impactful instead do not replace Burgess Park. It's like come back to the EQC before like initiating plans for Burgess Park.
Oh, sorry, I was saying just the first bullet and the two sub bullets.
Got it.
I think if we adopt that, then the other two aren't necessary,
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
unless we think it's really important to highlight Burgess Park.
Well, yeah, so I guess the question is the timing on Burgess Park, so we can make that recommendation, but what I'm hearing is the city council may not hear it until March or June. And if Burgess Park is heading down the path to execute contracts.
Yeah, I don't know where the city is with Burgess and the fields.
I don't want to misspeak, but I don't believe it's fully
Haven't yet.
prioritized right now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would suggest maybe indicating that you'd like to kind of be engaged early in that one.
Yes,
Really on any
Yeah.
conversation about that.
Because the planning's not underway with that one. They haven't like started. They haven't put out an RFP or anything, so really it's not as urgent as do not replace, but more so engage the EQC.
If we're talking about early designs, it sounds like the SRI complex is considering a multi-use field. And I don't know if they've been talking about artificial turf or natural grass, but since that one is up for discussion right now, maybe we should add that to this bullet as well.
I don't believe the EQC has jurisdiction over development projects
Hmm.
in that way. So I think that would be a comment to city council.
and if council were to take our recommendation and adopt such an ordinance, that would apply to SRI.
Yeah.
If the timing was right.
And there are a lot of public comments related to fields at SRI. If you go to the council email log online, CCIN, I haven't opened them, but I see the headers that say fields, fields, fields. So that might be interesting to see.
So in the interest of agreeing, I'm willing to go with the motion to prohibit. I'm very uncomfortable about having to remove existing field. Is there any way to separate that away? Or I guess, John, you're the one who's submitting this thing. Do you feel strong enough about that one to take the whole thing or not?
Well, I mean, the city council doesn't have to take,
I know, but
take
for my
whatever they
vote,
want. Oh, for your. Got it.
right? I mean, I don't want to vote for something I think
Right.
it's an overreach.
Right,
I mean, I'm supposedly representing people. I do feel it's a bit of overreach at this point, given where people are.
Well, again, I feel comfortable with the motion, but I welcome input from the rest of the commission on that particular point.
You could make the motion, see if there's a second, and then we can,
Okay,
if there's not enough votes, we can make another motion.
I'll do that then.
Okay, so I have a motion from Vice Chair McKenna to recommend city council adopt an ordinance prohibiting the use and installation of synthetic grass and artificial turf within the city. Applies to all properties and property types. Use City of Millbrae ordinance as a model. Include provisions for existing installations to remain in place under certain conditions, but ultimately must be removed within 4 years. To engage the EQC early in the replacement of Burgess Park or any other park fields. And to consult with experts in order to implement organic maintenance program for natural grass athletic fields. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Meyer.
Can I potentially make a friendly amendment before we vote? Because I feel the same way. We heard from Susan that the average life of artificial turf is 10 years. So why don't you make it 10 years? Like if you put it in, you got 10 years. And when you have
Just
to
to put
replace
it
it, as opposed to
10
4 years.
Instead of 10. Yeah, I will feel more comfortable with that one.
Anything about that one?
Not good. but,
Okay,
again, I think this will all get flushed out down the road.
okay.
But I guess if you really wanted me to.
Well, I'm
budge,
just,
I could go to 5.
I'm not gonna vote for it either, along with it. I'm just letting you know up front. So we can have the vote. If it passes, then it goes and the city council will deal with it as they see fit.
It won't pass.
Fine,
Well, there's only 3,
3-2.
but we have a 7-person commission,
Mm,
I
Yeah.
believe. But now
It's
you're
not
testing
just the majority of who's here. It has to be the majority of all.
you're testing my Robert's rule.
Oh my God. Because I think we have a quorum and you just
We
need to
do.
have a majority of a quorum.
Not the majority of the advisory body.
I believe so. Otherwise, you'd be hamstrung.
And Susan is raising her hand. I don't know if she has Robert's Rules of Orders answer.
So I'm sorry, I don't have Robert Rules of Order, but I can tell you that one thing that cities do, and the county is well, that they discussed, is to use language that basically says when the, when currently installed artificial turf wears out, becomes degraded, or at the end of a time period, it will have to be pulled out and replaced with plants or whatever you're going to replace it with. That's just a common sort of way of putting this. And I'm gonna lower my hand.
I
And-
like that.
Yeah, I like that one too.
So that's precisely what the Millbrae ordinance says.
Okay.
But they put the limit at 4 years. So it's the same what Susan described. If, as long as that installation is in good quality and not causing environmental harm, then it can stay in place up till 4 years. But at any point before that 4-year period, if it starts to show degradation and pollution and getting to the stormwater system or whatever, then it would likely have to be removed before the 4-year period.
Yeah, but the Millbrae had the 2 extra years of moratorium, correct? Is that right, Susan? When, by the time they put 4, they already
So,
had 2
yeah,
years.
so Millbrae was the very first locality to actually do this in California. And so they started, I think they started in 2019 or 2020. I'm not quite sure, so a while ago. But they decided that a moratorium would give everyone a chance to live with this and to figure out what they thought. And what they discovered, and also what the city of San Marino discovered, was that after that period of time, people really didn't have a problem with it. I don't know how much educating they did. It wouldn't surprise me if they did a fair amount during the moratorium period.
What was the moratorium period?
The
Yeah.
initial one for Millbrae was 1 year, and they extended it at the end of that year for 2 more years, and then in 2023, they made it permanent. San Marino went for a shorter period of time. I think their initial moratorium was like 8 or 9 months. It was a short period, and then they extended it for approximately a year, and then they extended it for an emergency month while they decided. And at the end of the emergency month, they made it permanent. So it's
Emergency
a little
month.
variation.
Month.
1 month.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
essentially,
they suddenly realized that they were at the end of their moratorium. But they didn't have a meeting scheduled until later in the month. So they went
Yeah.
through some sort of process to like extend the moratorium until they, made it permanent. So that's not a recommendation for that process. I'm just telling you what happened.
Agreeable.
So by the time they did the 4 years, they have had several years, like 3 years of.
Like
looking-
well, so San Marino was more like 1 year and 8 months.
So
So we
Rachel
can
has
go
an
back, yeah,
update.
we can go back to the motion. It is the majority of the quorum present.
Yes, okay, perfect.
So thank you.
So you're gonna away with it.
Would you two be more comfortable with 5 years?
We're haggling here what's the lifetime of this thing? And
Eight to 10 years.
It's like, we're forcing people to spend a lot of time. Right?
I don't know what the costs are for these.
They are expensive.
I mean,
It's like $15 a square foot or something. It's like two hardwood floors in your house. It's crazy.
you have the vote, so.
Do you want to repeat your motion? Go back to the motion. Or I can repeat it.
Sure.
Okay,
Do you,
We heard it.
okay, you're good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and we still have your second? Okay,
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, great. So we can have a vote.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote, and you're okay with me waiving reading it again
Yes.
before I vote? Okay. Alrighty, I know all your names. Okay, Commissioner Kissel?
No.
No, Commissioner or Vice Chair McKenna,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Polidrio Part,
No.
Commissioner Headley? Aye. Okay, so the motion passes with 3 and then 2 noes and 1 absent.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the discussion.
Oh, for the record, I mean, we have had native grasses for 20 years. Right?
Yeah.
So
It's all
it's
good.
not an issue.
Let's move to item D2. Review and discuss recommendations, no, D3, my apologies. Review and discuss recommendations to reduce single-use plastics from the impact of plastics in the environment ad hoc subcommittee. This presentation will be made by Commissioner Headley.
I'm wondering if we need a break. Do we need like a 5-minute
I
break?
can move by a
Okay?
I'll take one.
If we can do a break.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome back. Again, this is item D3, review and discuss the recommendations to reduce single-use plastics from the impact of plastics on the environment ad hoc subcommittee. And presenting this evening on this topic will be Commissioner Headley.
Thank you. All right. Thanks for the slides, Rachel. All right, so this first question is, what are single-use plastics? And these are plastics that are primarily made of fossil fuel-based chemicals and are really meant to be disposed after one use. So think like plastic water bottles, the plastic bags that are, you know, chips and cereal come in, serviceware, straws, plastic bags, that sort of thing. And it's grown exponentially, as we saw in that chart from Susan earlier, since the 1950s, and is expected to triple. So as we thought about single-use plastics, we were thinking about SB 54, which is a state bill, and Menlo Park's zero waste plan. So there's links to all of these if you want to understand more about why that's important. Next slide, please. And the connection, obviously, it does connect to climate change and then the impact to animals on the land and in the sea, including us. There's a lot of problems. So we can go through these slides pretty quickly. And then, you know, the question I had was like, why can't we just recycle? Because I know with Recology, you know, it's like put all your plastics in the thing. But John and I both attended 2 separate Recology tours. And I learned that they only have a market for plastics 1 and 2, not 3 and 4 and 5 currently, or any others. There's a market that's beginning to emerge for type 5 plastic that they're hopeful will get online. But a lot of the things we think we're recycling aren't actually being recycled currently. And then there are other options. So I've recently started using Ridwell, which is an option that you have to pay extra for. I think it's like $18 a month. And they'll take plastic film and multi-layer plastic. So like the plastic bags, any of that stuff, as well as the chips. So that's an option, but it's expensive for people. And I'm seeing now that Safeway and maybe some Targets are beginning to collect plastic bags for recycling, presumably. But, you know, it's either inconvenient or expensive for people. So and it doesn't cover everything. So that's why we wanted to, like, how do we reduce all of this? All right, next slide, please. In putting together these recommendations, we talked to a bunch of different people, including city council members, city staff, local youth, regional experts, business owners, looking at research from other cities and stuff around the world. And then the next slide, please. We were really thinking about, like, of all the different things we could possibly do, what would have the greatest impact on the climate crisis? And does the city have jurisdiction over that particular decision? And so this is the layout of opportunities, and I have a slide for each of them. So maybe we can just continue into the first one, and then we'll come back to this to have a conversation about what things we might want to.
Are they ranked in order of preference?
These are not, no, not exactly. They're kind of organized by like types.
Okay.
So you'll see. Okay, so the first number 1, what I like about this is eliminating single-use plastics in city activities and events, is it's fully within the control of the city. They can decide they're going to do it. Nobody else has to agree. It's kind of like CAP 5, where the city says, we're going to decarbonize our buildings, and leading as a role model. And that just feels really good on a number of levels. And I think given our past conversation, you know, 5 minutes ago, it aligns with that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to note here that it sounds like last year we started transitioning, slowly using aluminum cups for city operations and events. So that's a great start, but there's more to do, and we could encourage the city to do it more quickly. Related to that, if we're having so this is number 2, large city events, we will need to have like a robust compost and recycling set of options that are available and that are labeled. And Rethink Waste has some great things that you can print out and maybe laminate, even though we're trying to reduce plastic, but somehow have it. If we're going to use them over and over again, I'm okay. but the thing I learned so much at this Rethink Waste tour. So I recommend anyone who's listening, you can do an in-person tour or a virtual one.
Mhm.
And I think I'm thinking back to Ms. Ward and her fourth grade class and going to see them and their recommendations for what we could do for the planet. You know, they're dialed in on just the trash recycling situation and how it impacts all of life. And I learned a ton. So please do that. But what I learned is that if you put anything into the trash, say something that could be recycled, but it goes into the trash accidentally, it's not extracted. It just goes straight to Ox Mountain and is buried there. Whereas if you put it in recycling and it's not, and it can't get recycled, it will get extracted out. So, Yeah.
So at the margin, if you don't know, put it in recycling.
yeah, it'll be taken care of. But the one thing with recycling is, if it's wet, it can cause a problem for a whole batch of things and they might have to discard it. So they recommend, if you have like a glass or plastic bottle, to put the cap back on to keep the wetness in the container so it doesn't mess with the paper or anything else,
Okay.
right? Who knew? So, it's important that we learn how to do this properly so that if we actually, to make the recycling actually work. So educating the community, both at city events, but also maybe as part of some, initiative with social media and the email blasts about how to do this. All right, so those two kind of go together. All right, so opportunity number 3 is to continue to add hydration stations across the city. And a few years back, the city went around and tested all of the water fountains at the city parks and city locations, and there were a number of water fountains that were not working properly. And that, I think, program came in from the city council maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it sounds like they did the work and it's all complete.
It's not. I go to a lot of parks, and they don't.
Okay, so whatever they had done before is
Probably
complete.
For a while.
Yeah, so that's why we have this here is, I'm thinking about other cities, especially in Europe, where there's just potable water is available everywhere. And it's really obvious. I don't feel that in Menlo Park, which is why we have just continue to add, whenever there's an opportunity to add a hydration station, let's do it. And encourage businesses to do the same. Let's just make this all super easy. It sounds like there's grant monies available for this, et cetera. And this connects with opportunity number 4, which would be more controversial, banning the sale of plastic water bottles and boxes. But if we had hydration stations around and everyone got used to carrying their water bottle, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So that's why these come together. I feel like SFO has done this really well.
Mhm.
They've got their hydration stations. It's easy, it's touchless. San Francisco banned the sale and distribution of plastic water bottles on city property. So that could be like an easier step we could continue taking. Or we could consider taking maybe like at the pool. I don't know what kind of snacks or water is available, but maybe we say like, we're not going to do that here. And maybe we don't distribute plastic water anywhere within city. So the city just doesn't purchase that anymore. Other cities that have actually banned the sale beyond their, what they're personally or organizationally purchasing are Truckee and South Lake Tahoe.
So I didn't, well, this is for later.
Okay, so going on to number 5. Now, this one, enact a food service ware ordinance. Okay, so in 2020, San Mateo County's Board of Supervisors adopted a disposable food service ware ordinance. And 16 of the 20 cities in our county have adopted this ordinance. We are one of 4 exceptions. So Menlo Park, Woodside, Portola Valley, and East Palo Alto. And some of the highlights here, but essentially single-use plastic foodware is banned. And, this happened initially during COVID when they weren't like wanting to reuse plates. Like you would go to a restaurant and they would serve you something that was disposable because we didn't really understand how COVID worked at that time. So this
if
is.
This is San Mateo County ordinance, doesn't it apply to all the cities in? the county?
No, only the county land,
The corporation.
and then they're encouraging each city to adopt. Yeah, which most have. Mhm. So the main impact would be for takeout or, you know, your to-go containers, not having it be plastic and having it be fiberware or aluminum or glass. Now, we have a public comment coming from the CCL San Mateo Youth. They'll talk a little bit more about this.
Tonight?
Yeah, tonight.
great.
So they've stayed on late. Thank
wow.
you,
We
Perry.
can maybe offer them if.
Oh,
for
yeah.
the slide.
Yeah.
if you wanna Have them join as a
Yeah, so
presenter.
they can.
Yeah, so these folks were so great in educating John and I about what's been happening across the county. They're willing to go and talk to the restaurant owners to talk about how to make this transition, tracking pledges and even, well, I don't know if they're gonna track pledges, but something we should consider is who's committing to do this work, you know, before it becomes an official thing, and then celebrating once the switch is complete. So maybe this would be a good time for, sorry, Nikki, to share. I guess it was Perry who had to go away.
Yes.
Okay, great. Nikki, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So hi everyone. My name is Nikki Donovan. I live in the city of San Mateo. I'm a current senior at Hillsdale High School, but I also am a co-lead of what's called Citizens Climate Lobby San Mateo Youth. And we're made up of students across the entire county. So we're basically part of a national bipartisan climate lobbying organization. I also went to school in Menlo Park for 11 years. But first, I wanted to say that I'm just really happy to see that Menlo Park has an EQC and that you all are so thoughtful and devoted to your community. And I wanted to verbalize my support for a potential Menlo Park plastic foodware ban. We heard earlier in that wonderful presentation that plastics are both a public health crisis and an environmental crisis. They've been found in our blood, our lungs, the heart, the womb. They can cause health issues like cancer and reproductive damage, which comes from reputable research institutions like Harvard and the NIH. And so for this specific plastic ban, I've been working on this with my youth group for about a year now. Again, 16 out of the 20 cities in the county have already passed this ban, including my hometown, San Mateo. I've also surveyed restaurants, local small businesses, and found that some of them are unaware of the ban and the resources available to them. So we suggest that if Menlo Park were to pass this, that they would make a couple of amendments to make the ban more effective. And us as a youth group, we would love to help out. So we would love to make amendment suggestions or raise money to fund grants to help businesses transition away from plastic foodware, and also to complete citywide outreach to help raise awareness and help those local businesses. So we wanted to encourage you to follow the lead of so many cities in the county and adopt this ban and try to stop plastic at its source. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki. We're thrilled to be partnering with you and your organization. All right. On to number 6.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll skip that.
Yeah, so number 6 is deploying zero waste party packs. And Redwood City and Palo Alto both make these zero waste party packs available to their residents. So instead of purchasing plates and napkins and cups and cutlery for your parties, you essentially borrow a party pack from a community member. I think in both cities, different community members have signed up to be hosts. So you get like a pack of, 24 or 40, whatever the number is, and you sign it out and you take it and you use it and you clean it and you bring it back to your community member. They're not very expensive. So a party set for 40 is $93. Redwood City, that has a population of 80,000, has 8 party packs managed by 6 community hosts, and Palo Alto, with a population of 65K, has 23 party packs managed by 18 community hosts.
They
So
look
they-
like they're plastic.
They are plastic. So we could consider doing like a stainless steel answer, which I like that idea. But there is one, so if you click through on the party set, you don't have to do it, but if anybody at home is wanting to, the organization is actually like they're reusing plastic. It's like recycled plastic and very help, like if we have plastics, we might, it's not the worst. At least we're not throwing it into the water. Yeah, so you can learn about this organization, Preserve. But we could also consider things like stainless steel, which might be a more eco answer. We didn't look into the costs for that. But I'm appreciating the irony. Reduce plastics with more plastics.
So this is to purchase or to rent or?
Borrow.
Well, yes, community members would borrow it, but the city might purchase it. And it could be made available at the library as one option. If we were to go after this like a library of things idea that's really taking off across the world, that would be kind of awesome because we already have an amazing library now, you know, 2 amazing libraries. But that might also be a lot for the library and city staff to handle. So if we wanted to do this, we could potentially invite community members to host party packs. But ideally, like the city would purchase them and then they would be like a shared resource. Yeah. Okay, opportunity number 7 is to invite a zero waste refilling store to Menlo Park. So as we're thinking about, you know, how we might want to revitalize different parts of the city, this would be kind of cool to have a bulk buy refilling station. You know, with all kinds of good stuff. People bring their containers, they refill, nothing's going into the recycling or garbage. And there's a lot of great organizations, local organizations that are based right here on the peninsula that we could potentially invite them to have another storefront in Menlo Park somewhere. All right. To support potentially number 7, so Menlo Park has a community funding grant program to support local nonprofits whose programs support and respond to human service needs of Menlo Park. So right now that program it was established quite some time ago, and there's 4 areas that are currently considered community needs: people with disabilities, emergency assistance, low-income support, seniors, and youth. And one thing we could consider recommending is adding climate action / zero waste to this city council policy. And then local nonprofits could apply for funding. And I don't know if the organizations listed on opportunity number 7, the bulk buy, I was looking to see if any of them were nonprofits. I don't know if they are. So they may not be eligible for this funding, but nonetheless, it seems like we could easily make this recommendation to add climate action and zero waste to the list of community needs. And then we'll see what happens with that. But we might want to consider, depending on how much support these businesses need to make their enterprise profitable. And I don't know how big of a deal it is, but we might consider an exception to the 501c3 regulation requirement. Okay. And the last one, opportunity number 9, that's been a big theme in our whole conversation tonight, is just to continue to educate and inform the community about plastic pollution, about the impact to human health, to all of life on this planet, and things that they can begin to do. Because a lot of this has to do with individual choice. And if people have more information, they might begin to make other choices. Okay. So with that, the next slide are the opportunities, but maybe this is a good place to pause and public comment or I guess clarifying questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioner Headley. Are there any clarifying questions from EQC before we go to public comment? I had a few during the presentation, but any further?
It's a great list of ideas there. I'm sure that if we take any of these one, we can talk about more ideas, but I think I understand the goal.
Okay. Then, Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment on this item?
Sure, if you're in the room and you'd like to make public comment, you can grab a comment card over there and turn it back to me. If you're online, you can hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or to the right of your name. And if you're calling in, you can press *9 and we will be able to unmute you. I'm not seeing any hand raises online or comment cards. Oh, I do have a hand raise online, no cards in the room. So we can start with Ben. And Ben, I'm gonna allow you to talk. And do you need the timer, Ben? Are you good with your 3 minutes?
I'm good with my probably 30
Cool.
seconds. I just want to say again, these are awesome. I mean, the single-use plastics is sort of a no-brainer. I'm a little bit shocked that we are kind of behind other cities in our county on this. So I'd love to see some of these things move forward. Some of the others are a little bit more complicated because it involves getting more people involved and so on. But yeah, I would love to see that happen. I thought some of these things had happened years ago in other parts of the state, and I was always surprised to not understand why Menlo Park wasn't doing some of these things already. So thank you.
Ben, for your comment.
Was that a hand?
Yeah, I mean, this whole card thing is really,
Oh, that's fine. We can do it without the card, Doreen. Do you need you're good, you're good?
yeah,
Okay,
that's,
great.
I mean, it's also just, it's a comment, which is, I also think this is fantastic. I was very surprised that Menlo Park, particularly given the amount of resources in this area, the amount of companies that are here, that we are so far behind. So I'm really just echoing the same comments. I think it's a great list. There's some new ideas I hadn't seen on here before. I mean, the party packs, for example, that's, something simple that, that promotes sort of reuse. There's also alternatives to, there's bamboo, there's different types of, there's mushrooms, there's all kinds of different resources now that can be used instead of plastic. So particularly if they're being reused, so there are alternatives. I think the hydration stations is, again, I mean, this is an absolute, the great thing here are so many other cities have already done this. There's really no reason why. I mean, there's precedents, there's models. There's more low-hanging fruit here. So.
It's nice to hear both of your support. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Doreen. Any other comments? I will return the meeting to you, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll open up for EQC discussion. We'll go around the room again. Commissioner Pellegrino-Gilpart?
I mean, it's a great list. What are we doing with the list?
Oh, yeah, let me give some context, is that lots of good ideas. Some will take more city time
Right.
and effort than others, and we know that that is a scarce resource.
Yeah.
So those are things to consider as we.
So are we trying to talk about how to prioritize these things or?
Yeah,
I mean, as Ben said in our reviews, I mean, some of these things like the number one is like, sure, let's do
Yeah.
it. The water bottles, I think that we can borrow in San Francisco. I mean, it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah, there are several of these ones that seem very, very easy.
Indeed, we tried to make it, things that are doable. So I think, we want to get to a motion, obviously. And we could potentially say like, hey, these are the top priority things. And these other things are good ideas, but get to them when you have time.
Mhm.
Or we could say they're all important, like, let's just do all of them when it makes sense. So one thing we can just say is, like, yeah, we think these are all really great opportunities. Do that, goes to city council, they direct staff and staff just starts working on it. And they have our blessing to do all of these whenever it makes sense for them. That would be the easiest way to proceed, I think. But I don't know, Rachel, if you think it would be helpful to know which ones we think are most important from a prioritizing perspective.
I think that'd be a helpful part of the discussion for me, even if it doesn't end up in the motion, because it just starts getting too much wordsmithing, but
Yeah,
be a good outcome from the discussion to know that the number one priority.
yeah. And if I were to say my top priorities, would that be helpful? Like, I feel like the no-brainers.
We can do a round table.
Yeah.
We can start with you.
So I think that, number one is a no-brainer. Like, the city has complete control over that. Like, let's just do that and do that quickly. I think number 2 goes nicely along with that. And then I would say number 5, enacting the foodware ordinance. Just to be at par with almost every other city in our county.
Sorry, so 1, 2. sorry,
Yeah, 1, 2, 5, and then 8,
Oh, sorry, 1
actually.
through 5?
No.
1, 2, 5.
1, 2, and 5, all right.
1, 2, 5, and then 8, I think is an easy one to do, added as a community need. Frankly, and 9, and 2, and 3, and 4, no, but I do think like 1. I would say 1, yeah, 1, 5, 8, and 9.
So question, why not 4? Is it more problematic than it looks?
Well, it's more controversial if we're telling Safeway that they can't sell plastic water bottles anymore, but we could maybe.
So I peeped, again, I mean, this whole downtown just ate all my
Yeah.
thinking cycles. Plus the 2-month the month vacation, but I picked at the San Francisco, and it seems to be a small water.
Yes.
So it's very specific. It's
very
not just anything.
Not your like gallon jug of milk.
Right, so you can still do
It's
that.
easier to defend. It's like, okay, I mean, it's just one of, I don't know, I mean, don't sell that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to argue against any of my recommendations here. Yeah, so I mean, I think they're all good. Let's see, but what San Francisco did, as I understand it, was they banned the sale and distribution of plastic water bottles on city property.
Yeah, so I peeked briefly,
Yeah.
and I only got the 2019 press, but it said under 21 ounces or something. I mean, it was specifically about a small water.
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to say is they didn't ban it off city property.
Yeah.
Not like, they didn't say within city limits, you can't do this. It's more like at City Hall, you can't buy water.
Oh, is that what
bottles.
it said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Truckee
So that's
and-
pretty limited, huh?
Right, but Truckee and South Lake Tahoe did it within their city limits.
And it was any water bottles or?
I think yes. Well, I think, if you were buying bigger ones.
Right.
To be prepared for an emergency, that was still okay. So it was the smaller ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I hear you now. I
Yeah.
was just trying to piggyback on San Francisco, right? I mean, they got
Yeah.
away with it. And SFO is certainly easy to enforce. I mean, in the last few years, everybody brings their water bottle and then they refill it, and sometimes they forget, and then they have to go through the security line.
Exactly. So in my mind, maybe number 1, eliminating single-use plastics in city activities and events could be expanded to to include this. And so if there was water, plastic water bottles happening, say at the swim or the gymnasium,
Yeah.
that just doesn't happen anymore. Number 5 though, number 4 in my mind was a broader ordinance that applied to all commercial entities within the city.
Yeah, that would be tricky.
And that would be a trickier thing, I think,
Yeah.
especially given the current.
There is a vending machine, at least in Ariaga, that has water bottles and soda.
Mm.
Plastic.
Commissioner Meyer?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you still going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that I'm fine with, I'm supportive of your priority list. Probably the one that I would think is a bit trickier might be the party packs. Is like, how do you, that seems like a fair amount of resources to manage and track that they go there and they come back and whatever it is. I would say that number 9, one of, at least projecting from our family's experience, knowing what you can recycle and what you cannot recycle and what gets recycled, that's a lot of misinformation. People don't know. I mean, even me trying.
Yeah.
And different entities do it differently.
Yep.
Right, I mean, some places you can recycle like aluminum foil, right? I mean, that's a high energy.
Yeah.
Material, right, that can you recycle.
I have the answer. You need to keep your aluminum foil and pack it into a ball, and when it's the size of a softball,
Yeah.
then you put it in the thing, but if it's smaller than that, it falls through the cracks.
Yes.
So, but I didn't know that either, and I thought I was a good recycler.
So I guess one of the.
So I think education is a big,
Follow all these education ones. Do we need to have the city do it, or do we want to rely on Recology and others? I'm just wondering, we have limited capacity as a city to educate. And I think we need to be judicious about what we ask the city to educate our residents on. And that one, to me, I mean, we get mailers from Recology, I guess, I would assume everybody else does. They have flyers you can stick up on your refrigerator. So I wouldn't make that a top priority.
In my mind, the city wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, but they would take what Recology has and maybe plug it in to their,
Communication engine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, were you gonna add more about? So were you essentially like, I like all of them, but maybe number 6 was like not as much of a priority?
6 is sounded like the cheapest one to manage. The other ones, I mean, 4, now that you explain what it really means, that we get pushback.
Mhm.
I think the priority that you have there, I mean, the ordering you have in there looks close to my priority list, except for education. I think that we need more education. I don't know how to get it. But I think that the plastic bags, it's a biggie, right? I mean, we keep using plastic bags and
Indeed. All right. Others?
yeah, go.
Commissioner?
Yeah,
Murray,
I mean,
thoughts?
I'm excited about all these. I think prioritizing 1 and 2, just because they can happen within the city's limits makes sense. I also like number 9, educating and informing is, especially on this issue, plastic is big. I mean, mention like the different resin numbers, like numbers on the water bottles and plastics. And I think about California's lawsuit against ExxonMobil that's happening, or a couple months ago, about the misleading of the public with those numbers. I think that could kind of spark like a new wave of plastic recycling education. Yeah, I like all the, I'm also excited by number 7, refilling store. That one
Oh
just
my
looks
gosh,
cool.
me too.
It's also, then I think about like the craziness happening in downtown anyways, and trying to put that. Yeah, but I mean, there's that like spice store, like, put next door.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could be a cool little place to go to both. Vision, like, have that vision, but yeah. Like it, and I agree, the number 6, the party packs, I wrote a note. Saying I never really thought about this issue of like the people having parties at the park and having all their waste, but I think it's something to look into. I was also thinking maybe, it might be hard to manage, like you said. I thought maybe like a little, those little free library kind of ideas, but then it would also be hard to, clean and
Yeah.
still manage this stuff, but
Can I add a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
The party packs, it sounds like in Palo Alto that has like a really robust program. It sounds like they have a full-time staffer focused on zero waste. And they're, this person is constantly communicating with the 18 hosts, and then they're communicating with their community. Like there's a full-on thing going to help everyone in the community understand how to reduce waste. But I don't think we don't have those kinds of resources. So it might be more community, like, so if you're listening to this message and you're in the community and you want to take this on, that would be a great opportunity for someone, I think, to step forward.
yeah, I mean, it honestly sounds like a good, like, EP environmental science, project.
Oh,
So,
all right. Did you have
Commissioner
any?
Kissel? I agree with the priorities, 1, 2, 1, 2, 5. And 8, I think those are your. Yeah, so I agree, I like all the ideas, and I think we shouldn't take any ideas off the list. But I would put those 4 as the top recommended priorities.
Mhm. All right, so I was hearing so far in terms of priorities, 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
So it's 5 of 9.
Yeah, that's fair.
6 of 9. But John, what do you think?
I mean, I'm fully in agreement. These are all great ideas and opportunities. I really do think a zero waste, refilling store would be hugely successful and beneficial to the community. I don't know how the city invites a business to be part of their city unless, there's like a tax break or some sort of financial incentive, but, or if maybe it's hosted at a city building, perhaps, I don't know. And yeah, on the banning the sale of plastic water bottles, I feel like we could easily recommend that not happen on city property. If we wanted to back off on that and, but I'm fully supportive of all these, and I guess I would look to Rachel to understand, like, if we made a motion that the city should consider all of these, what happens next and what does that mean for staff and, how effective would that sort of a motion be? And any suggestions you might have on how we proceed.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I've spent some time thinking about this as well. We have one staff person, Public Works, working on waste, Joanna Chen, a management analyst who spends about 50% of her time on waste and, you know, her other commitments to the tree team, and the HVAC maintenance contracts and other special projects. And she works closely with the county's sustainability department. They have a large waste team that has some resources for some of these program areas. And she also works with Rethink Waste, the JPA that holds the contract with our hauler, Recology. And so she's more kind of clued into those regional meetings and what resources are available. Going back to kind of the timing and how we deliver this up to council, the priority session and the EQC report out, I think are still the 2 touch points for this one. I think Joanna's was so stoked on all of these. They were all very interesting to her, and part of her recommendation was seeing where the community-based organizations in the city are on these and where they can kind of support, and how she can maybe be a liaison from the county resources and Rethink Waste to community members to be able to own some of these ideas, like the party pack. She also had another idea that we didn't get into this presentation, but there's a new app like Too Good to Go or something, where food restaurants and stores will offer up discounted food on an app at the end of the day, so it doesn't go to waste. And she thought that'd be a cool idea for like teens or community-based organization to advertise that or get more restaurants signed up for it. And then as we were talking about the AP Environmental, was that, yeah, I was thinking about the YAC. And we still haven't kind of landed any initiatives with them, but there's certainly interest. So that could be kind of another opportunity where this subcommittee maybe goes and shops some of these ideas to the YAC to see if they can do it. Because I think where it comes down to most of it is the capacity issue, not so much the political will issue. So on the foodware ordinance, one concern Joanna had was like the county resources, well, they're no longer available. So we could, like, of course, copy and paste templates, but they're not going to be able to do the proactive business support that they were offering other cities. Another concern she had was the ordinance didn't reflect all of the goals of the zero waste plan, and that you can still use like the compostable plates for in dining experiences. And the zero waste plan outlines that you should have to use reusables and even reusable to go containers, which I know some cities have piloted. So I think bringing these to the council at those 2 touch points, and then Joanna really trying to empower community to take on some of the ones that make sense, like the party pack, and maybe even, you know, coordination with the zero waste store. And then I think recommending all of them, like they all fit within the zero waste plan, it all makes sense. And I think she could figure out how to sequence elevating any of those to council with items she has upcoming related to Recology or Rethink. There was just a Rethink presentation at council where Menlo Park student won their poster contest, which was fun to see.
I have a question for
Yeah.
you about the appropriateness of a community member being a liaison to a refill station. Like, how would that work?
The like the refilling store.
Yeah,
So I think if like a community member were to reach out to the stores and share like which storefronts are vacant, or just think about that. I can touch base with our economic development manager too, Frandine.
Yeah.
And see if she kind of has any strategies for enticing businesses. I know she's thinking about that a lot. So I think staff could kind of triage all of these. And with council direction in March, if community members were to show up to those meetings and kind of express interest for these things, we could see if we get like formal capacity to work on them. Otherwise, it would just be kind of Joanna's limited time, and she would, I think, over time chip away at these.
Yeah.
And she would know to prioritize these in her work plan, but wouldn't necessarily be accountable to the UQC on it.
Thank you.
Well, there's only two that look like they need ongoing support, right? I mean, passing an ordinance is a one-time thing. Right, so I mean, deploying and managing the party packs is an ongoing effort. The store will be an ongoing effort. The rest of them, I don't see where they're ongoing support.
The
Where
foods-
would the community support come out of this?
Oh, so for the foodware ordinance, like we would need to engage the businesses early and often in the process. We would also need enforcement and education to clientele and to the businesses after. Nikki alluded to the ordinance not being that strong, and that the enforcement is it's like our zero emission landscape equipment. You have to report it, and then maybe someone will show up. And the county health is in charge of enforcement, so they have a really large jurisdiction to take care of.
So it's education and enforcement where you'd want community engagement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, yeah, it seems like we could. I'm wondering if there's some things that we can make a motion on that we actually want the city to take action on tonight or following this evening. And then the others could be sort of, more of an effort to, reach those touch points that you mentioned previously. So would it make sense to make a motion where we want to make staff and council aware of these opportunities, and then EQC prioritizes 1, 2, and 3, not 1, 2, 3, but 3 items that we want the city to take more immediate action on? Does that make sense to the commission?
And staff.
Yeah, and I would say maybe even 1 or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I were to say like. Okay.
Huh?
All right, you want me to make a
Please.
motion? Okay, so to eliminate single-use plastics in city activities and events. And to ban the sale of plastic water bottles on city property.
Okay, that's number 1 and number.
It's kind of a version of number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe number 8. Because I think that's an easy one.
Which one is it?
Add climate action / zero
Oh, yeah.
waste as a
Yeah.
community
Oh, yeah.
need,
Yeah.
What
so that
about-
those people can apply for funding.
What
for the
about
community.
there was one that we were saying, oh, that,
All the other counties are doing.
right, that's.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that?
Number 5.
5, yeah.
5. I mean, that sounds like an easy one.
I don't think it's that easy though, at least based on what Rachel just said is.
Right.
We might have to do some modifications to the ordinance to make sure it aligns with our zero waste plan, so that might be I think that might be a bigger undertaking that maybe we ask them to prioritize in the next cycle of priorities. Yeah. What do you think, Brian?
What do you think? You think it's a hard one?
That's
Number
definitely the
5,
hardest one.
yeah.
The foodware ordinance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took all the other cities multiple years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Close coordination and consultant and county support.
Can we not put it in the top priority, but highlight it? Because I mean,
As an opportunity.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean,
Something to
being
consider.
16 of 20 cities
Yeah.
adopted
I feel,
exceptions.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, kind of like, let's do these 3 things now and let's get this other one prioritized.
Yeah.
soon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, get a schedule for it.
Yes.
Okay. So do we have a motion? Have you been typing?
I have been.
Would you show it on the
typing.
screen?
Sure, let's-
Very good job with the list. That's a very nice list.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, you're looking at some old notes as I try to take minutes here too. So we have a motion a motion from Commissioner Headley to recommend that the city eliminates single-use plastics in city activities and events, ban the sale of plastic water bottles at city facilities, right?
Or on city
Events.
property,
Oh, on city property.
whichever way is.
And add climate action zero waste
Mhm.
as a community need.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then this one we'll have to wordsmith a little bit. And develop like a plan,
Develop a plan
you said
for,
at the same time, so it must be.
yeah.
To enact the county-wide food.
I second the motion.
So motion second from Commissioner Headley and Commissioner Kissel to recommend that the city eliminate single-use plastics in city activities and events, ban the sale of plastic water bottles on city property. And add climate action zero waste as a community need. Was it for the grant program? For
Yeah.
city grant program? I think that's.
The community grant program.
Okay, for community grant program and develop plan to enact the countywide foodware ordinance.
Do we-
Re-adopt.
Do we need to also then add something about all the other 6 items? For consideration or?
Sure.
I'm just wondering, how do we? There's no reason not to give them the
Yeah.
other list.
Yeah.
Yes, good.
Yeah. I mean, of the list, the one that seems, I don't know what it means, is number 7. How to take action on is number 7, right? Invite zero waste refilling store to. I don't know what. Good idea, but. But.
Yeah, I think I'm hopeful that like number 6 and 7 could be something that community groups could, right. Sort of, either with the party packs, some, a community group could take, responsibility for leading that, and maybe they can get a grant from the city to help kick it off with the food, with the party packs. And then, yeah, there might just need to be some sort of community outreach to those businesses that do the refilling, and then trying to make some connections. That it seems like the city has a little less influence on that one. So, yeah, I think this is a really good motion. I do like the idea of, the more hydration stations that are added, the less likely we need single-use plastic bottles of water. So, I think our idea there was just whenever there's a public works project, being considered, that hydration stations are included in that new construction. That's, seems like a opportune time to put in those hydration stations, and hopefully over time, those will be more prevalent throughout the city as a result. So I don't know if we want to add that, or if we're good with the way it is. I'm good either way. I don't know if the commission has any thoughts. Or have we already asked for enough?
I think according to rules of order, once we have a motion, we're supposed to vote on it.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll do roll call voting. Commissioner Kissel? Oh, yeah, okay. Vice Chair McKenna?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner
Aye.
Fire?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes with 5 in favor and 1 absent and 1 vacant. Thank you.
All right. We will move to item D4, review and discuss recommendations from the Distributed Energy Resources Ad Hoc Committee. This subcommittee includes Commissioners Kissel, Hill, and Pellegrini Yopart, and we welcome your presentation.
Am I doing it? Let's see, can we see the slide?
You should be able to now.
Next slide. So, talk a bit about what are these things. So distributed energy resources are things like solar panels, electrical batteries, and other resources that tend to be behind the meter, which means it's the other side of PG&E, or whatever. In our case, it's PG&E, and that tend to we think of them as being owned by customers. There are things that generate energy or that they can manage energy that the consumer can, the customer can do something with, the consumer can do something with. So when we started talking about this thing, the idea was to raise the visibility of energy as something that's important to our transition to decarbonizing. We want to encourage the use of green energy. We want to reduce the generation of greenhouse gases, and by leveraging some of these resources, we can encourage the transition. The industry is changing very, very rapidly. There are many stakeholders. We were expecting some things to happen in the second half of last year that haven't happened yet. So I think at this point, the intention of this subcommittee is to raise the visibility of these issues. And there are some specific things that can be done, but to some degree, this is an evolving story, right? So as far as the goals that are in there is like, yeah, we want to spread awareness about what are the benefits of these DRs, what are they? We want to encourage their adoption, but to some degree, we're preparing the stage for some other things that are going to be happening. They may happen very quickly. We'll talk a bit about that one, right? But this is a bit of a preparing the stage. There are some specific things that we're recommending here. It's a evolving industry story. So when we talk about what are the benefits of DER, there are at least three things that we can talk about: resilience, affordability, and energy independence. The first two are in some sense are stronger than bigger than the last one. So resilience is the ability to for one of us to operate even when the wider utility grid is not operating at full capacity, right? So in the case of a disaster or something, right? So if you have some batteries in your home, you can you can charge your mobile phones, you can use your refrigerator, you can preserve some medicines that are important to you. You may run some medical equipment. So that's the resilience part. The affordability is one that is not as well aware, I think, and that's the cost of electricity changes over time. So by being able to use things like residential batteries, you can charge electricity when it's cheaper and use it when it's more expensive. So there's a value here in using DERs to reduce the cost of electricity consumption by just using the electricity from the grid when it's cheaper, or maybe by using the self-generated electricity like photovoltaic or your solar panels, right? So the resilience and affordability are the main benefits of DER. Energy independence is a bit harder to accomplish because to be off-grid, you may need to have either large generation or big storage or a lot of consumer trade-offs, right? I mean, being able to operate with very limited consumption, right? So we're mostly focusing on resilience and affordability. Next slide. So we've talked about several ideas, and we have been working on this for several months, and so things have been changing a bit. We'll talk a bit about these 4 ideas here. I think the next slide is going to show a 5th idea. So if you go to the next slide, I noticed that there was an edit that didn't happen. So the first one is about better awareness and interaction with Peninsula Clean Energy. And Peninsula Clean Energy has had a number of initiatives in the DER space. They have been talking about acting on them for the last 6 months, and they keep pushing it out. I think it's because of all these changes on the industry. So I think that the first thing is to understand exactly where they are. I mean, what are they having in the pipeline? Peter Levitt is the main contact there, and he just this week he was talking on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, we have great plans for 2025." Right, so understanding what their plans are the key thing. They are our energy provider. The most natural way to do anything on DER is to piggyback the PCE. When we started talking about this thing, my hope is that was at this point we would be able to say, oh, we're going to piggyback on these plans from PCE, but they haven't applied. So the second type of ideas on DER are about rich codes. Now, rich codes would be leveraging the new CEC, the energy code for California Energy Code for 2025. We looked briefly, not briefly, we looked a bit about what's in there in the DER space. We didn't see anything that was clearly something that we can piggyback. Maybe we're missing something, but I looked at the things that are in the in CEC 2025 don't seem to advance significantly DER, so it didn't look like there was any clear option on there. The other two, the next two, I think that we have slides to talk about that one. So that's communication, and then a particular idea about Belhaven. The last one, we're advised by Rachel that that's not something that we can do. So just to mention, since it shows up in there, there are some ideas about DER that the legislature had been advancing that didn't end up happening in the last session, in particular, our dear governor vetoed. And I was thinking, well, maybe we can just make more noise about that. But anyway, so that's not in the list because it's not something for the EQC to advise. All right. So the next 2 slides are about things for communication, and I particularly like the idea of explaining better what are the benefits for DER, because I think that there's a lot of that we can do in that space. So the idea here would be encourage more awareness about what are the benefits of DER, piggybacking on different things that are happening. For example, a presentation from city staff about how the city is benefiting from DER, having residents explain how DERs are helping them to either resilience or saving money or whatever. I mean, with batteries or solar panels, having PCE present their plans for DER, government photovoltaics is the process, but the program that they are using, the PCE is using to add solar panels to places like the city hall, right here. They are also adding batteries. At some point, they have some plans on PVP. And then other presentations, right? So from nonprofits, even installers, there's a lot about people not knowing what can be done with DERs and how it works and how you benefit from there. So one idea that we talked about was how can those benefits being distributed, right? So you can do it through online presentations, you can do it through a kickoff event. There might be a place in the website on Menlo Park that you can talk about those things. I believe that it would be possible to find volunteers to help staff on this. With my hat as a homeowner, I would be willing to spend a significant amount of time just advocating for this thing, right? So I mean, many of us have done it through our house tours. This is a bit like a house tour, is some homeowner saying, this is how it benefits me, this is how it can benefit you. So this general idea about leveraging the relationship that the city has with its residents to explain the benefits of DER and advocate for its wider use and explain how time of use can help you, etc. Next slide. And so the second idea is, this is a more concrete idea. Is something to toss to PCE and staff as a potential thing. So Bellhaven has expressed interest over time about photovoltaics, about solar panels. And we have some grant that's available that can be used, at some point is going to be used to benefit Bellhaven. So one thing that's happening with Bellhaven, with the CCCT team has been advocating for resilience through residential batteries. Something that hasn't been explored, I think, is the benefit of having residential batteries to reduce the cost of electricity by doing time of use, time shifting. So that's addressing the affordability part. The difference between the peak and off-peak rates right now is about, it depends on the rate, but it's about 2 to 1. That may grow over time, like 3 to 1. So if you charge at the off-peak, you can save a significant amount of money by using that electricity later on. It also gives you a bit of resilience, but the emphasis here would be on affordability. So the idea here to float is, can we help encourage people to install, to use this time shifting by helping the installation of batteries? Does this make sense? I don't know. Batteries prices are going down significantly, and they keep going down. The majority of the cost, I think, at this point is the inertia and also the electrical work of installing the batteries and having your electrical system and your house be installed, and the fact that people don't know about this. So the idea would be kickstart this adoption by having some pilot program in Bellhaven and seeing how it works. I mean, do people think this is a great idea? This is a non-starter, whatever, right? So ideally, it was piggyback with a BPP program from PCE or something like that. But if there is a grant, that something that could be tried. So I think that at the end of the slide, yeah. So there are a bit more details over here about how it could work. So there are kind of 2 different versions about here, but who gets a commitment to who's paying for the electricity installation, who owns the battery. I think that different ideas can be played around here. You can structure it in different ways. Again, the cost of the batteries keep going down. Residential portable batteries are really cheap right now. And that's this, I think that's the next slide. I forgot when I put this slide together. When we put this slide together, but I think the second one is, yeah. So there's one with the stationary batteries, the other one is with portable batteries. The portable batteries are like, I think it's $500 for an entry level. So they are much getting closer to being usable, but still you have to do the electrical installation. So, so this is an idea that can be tossed as potential for that pilot on the program. How practical it is, I think it depends on multiple variables, right? So back to the next steps, right? I think that to me, the clear one is making it DRs being more visible, right? So if there is any reception for that, I would sign for it to be one of the volunteers to work on that one. I think that we could find other people to do that one. The pilot on the time of use for the lake storage idea, I think that's an idea that I would pass it on to for the grant. But we certainly have to connect with whatever is happening on PC, because this is grounded on their programs. I mean, what can they do about taking advantage of these distributed energy resources for BBPs or at some point they had a plan that they were going to provide loans, zero interest loans for installing batteries. I don't know whether that's still happening. So these are the ideas. I mean, it certainly is much less well fleshed out than I thought it was going to be when we proposed the subcommittee 6 months ago. Because many of these things are still cooking somewhere. So that's where we are. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. I'll open up to any clarifying questions from the commission.
Clarifying question if that's appropriate.
Yeah.
I was curious if this Anchor Solix or similar, if you could explain a little bit about how these portable batteries would work in an
How does it work?
apartment.
So these things are essentially like normal batteries, except that they're on wheels. And because they are on wheels, they are bought by consumers directly. Which means that their prices are much lower. So one of the challenges, if you go to the previous slide, right? So that's a particular vendor called PointGuard, right? If you try to find out exactly how much it costs to one of those batteries, it's tricky because they don't sell them directly. They essentially have to go with an installer. The installer will get it from PointGuard and then they'll charge you whatever they can get it away with, essentially, right? But if you go to the other line, you go directly to Anchor or to whatever is EcoFlow, and then you buy from them. So these things are like the other batteries. Their warranties are a bit lower. The number of cycles are going to be lower. They can scale equally well. They still have to be connected to the electrical panels.
Mm.
So essentially what is needed to use this thing is a basic installation on your electrical panel in the house. So somebody has to actually do that installation. Once you have that one, you can buy, anybody can buy several of these things and install it into your electrical installation in the house. And then they can work for TOU, for time of use or resilience or whatever.
They don't have an option where you plug it into the wall or charge it outside in the sun.
You normally would do it as a sub panel on the panel, right? So think about the panel in your garage or whatever it is, and then or inside the house, and then there is a sub panel in there that looks like a box on the far right,
Mm-hmm.
and then the portable batteries connect into it, right? And the regulation is such that they don't need a permit. Because it's not attached to the house. So it's like a normal battery, but they don't need a permit. They can buy it directly. We can buy it. So the Anchor has been advocating for these things. They seem to be getting some traction. I don't know what the numbers are. And they are much cheaper.
It looks like you can get like portable solar panels for it, plug them, charge them directly. So,
Sorry, what was it?
looks like with these models from Anchor, you can get like portable solar panels.
Yeah, they also have an inverter, so you can also
Yeah.
charge, right. Yeah, and the CCCT program, what they do is they have a smaller version of this guy. And then they charge it and they use it as a storage bank for emergencies, but that's only for resilience because it's pretty small.
Yeah.
If you want to use them for time of use, then they have to be much significantly bigger and they have to accept many more cycles. So that's the different part here, right?
And they have to
I
be
don't
hardwired.
know technically how many cycles these batteries can support. So that would be something to investigate. Right. But from a cost and installation perspective, the big difference is that because they are not attached to the house, they don't need a permit. And because they are purchased directly by the consumers, they are much cheaper.
Yeah.
Two questions. When you talk about the PCE grant spending, are you referring to the money that Menlo Park got from the state, the 4.5 million?
Yeah, the second part.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, do you have any idea where things are with vehicle to grid, vehicle to home as a DER?
Yeah, that's probably not going to start happening until later this year. But it is slowly getting there. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the other big component of this one.
Another moving piece.
Yeah.
So we're still clarifying questions.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be huge when, because it's storage and cars is like 80 kilowatt hours
Yeah.
compared to a typical home battery is like 10, 15 kilowatt hours.
Okay, any other clarifying questions? In the commission? Okay, then Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do, let me open up public comment officially. If you're in the room, grab your comment card. If you're online, you can raise your hand. We have two in the room, it looks like, and one raised hand online. So we'll start with Brian Schmidt from Menlo Spark.
Thanks. Great presentation, very exciting issue. On behalf of Menlo Spark, we are interested in this issue and helping move forward on this. In addition to points that were raised in the presentation, I would say on affordability, DER could be the main solution to the problem with the high cost of electricity in our area. So that's really important in dealing with the other issues that DER is very supportive of electrification. If you got PV panels and batteries, you should electrify everything else in your house. So it's a virtuous cycle, in my opinion. So those are the things those are some really good reasons why these different aspects of climate issues, electrification and renewable energy through DER work together. And I kind of hinted at this with the Bellhaven, $4.5 million. The second half of that money, 2.25 million, is not yet allocated. So there's some flexibility on how to use that money. Personally, I think Menlo Spark is very interested in seeing that money spent on renters. So if we can figure out ways to make that happen, I think that would be very useful in whatever context DER.
Is resilience more important or is time of use cost savings more important?
I would probably guess from the perspective, when we're talking about Bellhaven, the time of use is more important. Because then you can provide some very significant benefits to economically stressed communities doing that.
So the challenge, because we had this conversation, and part of the challenge is the time of use is more expensive than resilience. And so we could do it for fewer people and give a meaningful financial benefit, or we could do it for more on resilience. Lower cost per residence.
Yeah, resilience is pretty easy to.
We're in public comment moment, so
Sorry, sorry.
if Brian has anything to say, then we can discuss fully afterwards. Yeah, it's fine.
I'll just add that, I'm wondering about these portable battery systems, if, they could have sufficient cycles to be useful while not connected into the home panels. Because if that's the case, then you can unplug your fridge and plug it into your standalone battery and get your time of use that way. So I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
It's a behavior issue.
I'm sorry?
That's a behavior issue. Like, are people gonna like,
Yeah, it comes, well, if people are trying to save money,
right?
it might work.
Yeah.
And then finally, I was going to say that, one thing I really like about this is something I've said to PCE, is to this extent they're looking at pilot projects, consider piloting them in underserved communities. Underserved communities should not be guinea pigs, but they're great places for pilot projects where you're first trying to test out, and bring benefits. These places should be first rather than last to get the benefits of the change in society we're trying to do. And this DER is an excellent part of that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, our next commenter, Doreen.
Just, it was unclear what the recommendation was, so if there could be some attention to what the recommendation would be, and then if there's any, if there could be some research on other models or modes of implementation, a bit of research on what else we could leverage from neighboring cities. Be helpful.
Thank you.
And then we can go online to Ben. Let me unmute you. Or ask you to unmute. Okay. Ben.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, this is a really interesting, this has been a super interesting topic. I would say that, and I'm pretty close to this field. I actually was the CEO of a battery company. It's changing incredibly fast. And I would bucket it and say, if you're trying to do demand response, where you're actually trying to leverage these batteries as kind of a buffer to capture energy when it's cheap and just, discharge it when it's expensive, you really have to go through thousands of dollars of integration into your sub panel. You have to have master switches to turn them on and off to prevent backflow into the grid. You've got to have union electricians coming in. It's probably, I don't know how much money is available from public support programs for this, but it's super expensive right now, and it's coming down really, really fast. I would say there's a couple of interesting angles here. One is, we have these periodic grid failures, and there are people in the community who are a little bit more kind of like elder people or people who have medical equipment that has to run no matter what happens. And it might be worth like focusing on people that are just a little bit more kind of exposed when we have grid failures. I think in the past, I even heard the PG&E had some sort of incentives to help people like this. I'm not sure if that's still true or not. So that would be one area. And then just generally educating people on this topic, because it's going to be a really, really big deal within the next, few years. And as soon as EVs start to be able to work as demand response entities, like, vehicle to home, I heard you guys talk about that. But even there, it's really expensive. So the Tesla Cybertruck comes with a really large 9 kilowatt inverter. So it can literally run your house directly off the truck. But other manufacturers like Ford and GM, you have to buy a separate inverter to put on the wall, a separate gateway, a separate master cutoff switch. It's really, really expensive and complicated. So I just don't think we're really quite there yet. That's just my opinion.
Thank you for your comment, Ben. Okay, I don't see any more hands raised online, so we can close public comment and return the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Lunder. I'll open it up now for EQC discussion. Would you like to start?
Can I?
Oh, sure. You want to address the public comments?
Yeah, so, as I said, when we started talking about this committee, we were expecting that PCE at this point would have particular proposals on several of these areas. I think that the ideas that we have put there forward, the part about communicating about the benefits of DERs, I think that's probably the single most important. Right, I mean, it's like, because right now, we had a big rush on installing solar panels with the transition out of NEM two. And then there was a big crash, and part of the crash is because people think that there is no benefit on putting solar panels. So just talking about, look, if you put solar panels and you put a battery, you have all these benefits. Talking about, oh, if you have solar panels, you can add a battery to it without breaking NEM two contract. Just talking about those things, I think would make a big difference. And as Ben pointed out, I mean, this thing is changing very fast. Right, so there are new solutions, new batteries that come with their own inverters, their own switches. Everything is changing so fast. So the idea about the pilot, that was, okay, well, I mean, we have the money and we're willing to try that one. Because I think that as it was described about Bellhaven, that's a community that should be benefiting from these things. But until they see people in the community benefiting from them, they are not going to believe it. So as a cycle to get it started, but really it's not going to be having real fruition until probably next year. But the prices of these things are coming down. The bottleneck is the electrician work, right? Having somebody there and working on the electrical panel. But if it's done at volume, the price, even the price of that is going to go down. Right? But it's getting the stage ready, just started talking about this. So I personally believe strongly on let's educate people about the benefits of DER. The other part, I want to hear what PCE is planning. And they are cooking things, but I don't know exactly what they are. Anyway, yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So it sounds like now you can install a battery and you don't need solar panels to power it.
Yeah.
Has that always been true, or were people just not doing that because it made sense more to do?
I think people were not doing it because it was expensive, and now the only people who were doing it were. Yeah, I don't think anybody was doing it.
But now this maybe makes sense, like for Bellhaven.
I'm advocating, I mean, personally, like. So the latest CEC requirements require your house to have a new construction to have solar panels, but also to be battery ready. The new collection of smart panels or panels, right? Like Schneider. Schneider has a new 200 amp panel that is ready to install a battery. So once you have the installation, the electrical part, adding the batteries is getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. Once you have that and the price of the kilowatt hour is 45 cents, I mean, just the price is ridiculous. If we had a stronger time of use difference, I mean, now it's 1 to 2, but if it was 1 to 3, I would put it in my house.
Yeah.
Just to do the time of use here.
Yeah.
I think the reason it hasn't happened, people who would have done it before might have put in another, diesel battery backup, right? So batteries were so expensive and the time of use benefit was so small.
Right.
That it just didn't make sense. So if you're working on only resilience, you have a gas powered or whatever in your garage. And now for the time of use and the cost of batteries coming down, it starts to make sense.
Right. Well, maybe I'll just complete my thoughts here. I love the idea about educating the community, and I love the idea of using some of the money that the next tranche that's coming in to support the folks in Bellhaven. I think that would be because that is the concern that I've heard from that community about electrifying their homes has been around affordability.
Yeah.
The biggest one, and that would really make a difference.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether they have solar.
I mean, I share the sentiment about affordability and that's what I said from on the Spark about, when we're gonna pilot some of these programs, go into like Bellhaven and lower income communities, not as guinea pigs, but they deserve to have like the first chance to get to use, use these technologies and utilize what we're proposing, so. My thoughts.
Great. Sure, Kissel, any other thoughts?
No, I think, and Laura pointed out, I think we do need to leverage whatever PC is gonna do beyond the education. Part. I think we should do the education no matter what, and I think there are things going to happen and the project is already underway. If we can partner with them to start, because I think, one of the issues will, if we can package them up, right, whether it's resilience or it's time of use, cost shifting, right? What are the deployment models? What are the costs, both the device costs and the installation costs? So we can start communicating that to potential participants.
Yeah, I don't remember where we talked in any detail about the CCCT plan, but resilience is much easier to deal than affordability. Both because the battery sizes are much smaller, but also for resilience case, you are willing to actually unplug the refrigerator and plug it into somewhere else. Right, so you don't have to do the whole electrical work on your house, right? And that's expensive. So resilience, we could widely deploy that one, right? I mean, the CCTV people are already doing some of that. I think that in some sense for me, that's an easier problem. It would be very useful, but I think that the affordability part is the part that is problematic for electrifying and going full electric.
Especially,
It's just too
especially for
expensive. It's too
renters.
expensive.
Well, it's
And the only
expensive,
thing
yeah.
that we can control right now is either you put solar panels and then get that electricity for free, or time of use.
And for renters, that's also harder because you have to convince the landlord to do it.
Right.
It's affordable for resilience, you can do it yourself without the landlord.
Right. And that's why the idea about the portable batteries may be easier for renters, because if you have a portable battery, the renter may own the battery as opposed to the landlord. So the landlord would own the electrical part, but the renter could be responsible for the battery, and you go with renter. It gets trickier. I don't know where anybody has done this, but smells like it's a possibility.
Great, well, I'm just thinking of our role as an advisory body of the city council, how we might want to incorporate what we learned here from that presentation into an action. Is there something that we see as a commission that we want the city to take action on? And is it open to hearing ideas on that?
Yeah. Is there anything on the, so the pilot idea, in some sense, staff is going to work on what to do with that, that grant, right?
Yeah, so next month at the EQC, we'll be presenting ideas for how to spend down the second half. And maybe even potentially how to spend down the first half. So we'll give a good progress update then. And I think what I was hoping to get out of this meeting was, does the EQC think DER is an appropriate use of community-wide electrification grant funds, so that I can go and build out the work of this subcommittee to bring back next month, and then take action on whether we want to recommend it to city council. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, should I spend time over the next month looking at the ideas of these three
So
commissioners?
it's, yeah, so it's a good question. So relative to heat pumps, hot water heaters, insulation, cooktops, right? All the other electrification initiatives that are potentially bundled into that. Where does this fit? And I would say, respectfully, given what we just talked about, resilience would be the only one I would advocate to try to roll into this program. I think the time of use is just going to be too hard, both from the economics and getting a landlord buy-in. So I would say if we're gonna try to roll any additional functionality into that program, it would be the resilience. And in particular, I think, I don't remember who made the comment about people who have medical needs or some urgent need for electricity when you have a resilience problem.
I think that with that PG&E does have a program that already exists. Where you,
Like discounts on getting
I
home
think they just provide
a battery.
a battery pack, yeah.
Okay,
Medical baseline.
Yeah, and
so it's called.
CCCD has, is addressing, is doing something, a significant amount of work on that space. Yeah, to me, the challenge on electrifying places like Belhaven, well, in general, is the cost of electricity is too high.
I know.
That's, I mean, the overall.
Exactly.
So insofar as moving forward with any ideas on here, the first thing I would do is check what PCE has in the pipeline. That's it.
I can share they were going to apply to the state's SGIP program and the state had delays on that.
Right.
So that
I mean,
stalled there.
that's what I think that
So I
just
think it's kind of
happened, right?
crickets, and so that's why it's like, does the city want to take any of this on outside of our contract with PCE, which is,
I think
possible.
it's worth it. I mean, really, I mean, even if it's just to get the concept, get people thinking, oh, this is
Yeah.
a way of doing it.
Yeah, some
And
pilots,
then-
I think.
Right, it's a pilot, right? It's like. Anyway,
So beyond the pilot from an education perspective,
right, so the
let's
additional
assume we
part.
get volunteers, you and I, and I'm sure we can find others who are willing to volunteer and basically expand on the home tour concept and make it more accessible to a broader audience.
Yeah, so
So
that one, I think that.
What role does the city have in it?
Right, that would be my question to Rich, is like, what role would the city have in, the education idea? Right, so I think, to me, there are those two different things, right? I mean, one is the pilot or the funding part, and then the other one is the education. The education, I think it's an easy one to make happen, but I don't know what the role of the city is.
yeah, so we're right now evaluating the sustainability website. We've kind of built out a couple different wireframes to test with departments and our communications person. So that could be a really interesting place for the EQC as a whole to plug in, or as individuals to plug in. Any events that kind of line up with our climate action plan, we can promote, we can support in the sharing on our social media channels. We can't necessarily support in like printing materials or spending staff time at events, but to the extent that we're available.
Well,
Like that.
I'd love to get involved in the sustainability website. Understand what's happening there and where we can plug in, you know, a whole host of initiatives. Who is it that sponsors the home tour?
Actera.
That feels like another really great way to plug in.
I love this, the analogy.
The
for
metaphor.
for the metaphor, thank you.
And maybe Terra is the right partner instead of the city. I mean, we can work with them because they've already got a big database of people
do
who are
a lot of
interested in people
education.
who have homes and education.
Yeah, and if there's stuff for our website, like we've had students reach out and say, why isn't there anything about school buses on your website? And we go and put it up there. So we could kind of take that same approach for as residents who want to see something, we can reasonably do that.
So do we need to make a motion? Do we
I
need
think
an
we
action?
need to make a motion because we'll come back.
Okay.
The one thing I was thinking about is, doesn't sound like we're ready to disband this committee. We neglected to talk about that for the plastics committee. So maybe next meeting we could true up our committees, unless you guys want to disband right now, we could do that.
We could disband the
I
plastics
think you can.
committee.
Yeah,
So do we want to make a motion to disband these committees?
yes.
Okay. I'm not gonna screen share, but we'll have,
Are you guys ready to
Uh,
disband?
No. I don't think so. I don't think we're ready to spam.
So only the plastics is ready to disband.
okay, I
What's
can't
what's
do
the
that,
time?
I'll have to, we'll do it next time, I'll make an agenda item.
Okay,
Because
because we've already passed
We
that.
passed the
agenda
item.
That's fine.
And I don't
That'd
want
be
to go back
quick.
to the handbook.
Oh,
We'll do it next time.
all right,
And maybe then you'll be ready to spend.
okay.
Okay. So we can
Reports.
move on to
Yep,
reports. Yeah.
so thank you again for the excellent presentation and a good discussion. We'll now move on to reports and announcements. You can now hear reports and announcements from staff and commissioners. Ms. Launder, do you want to
Yeah.
start?
I'm happy to start. I want to follow up on the heritage tree recommendations from a couple meetings back, or just the November meeting. I want to thank Commissioner Headley and Commissioner Hill for providing feedback on the tree tags. We're moving forward with creating tags to raise awareness of our heritage trees and public street trees. I wanted to share a couple events of interest. The January 28th City Council meeting will have our local amendment to the municipal code to support pre-wiring. And so it'd be great to have feedback before that meeting or at that meeting, and I'm happy to kind of share the language that we've been working on with our building department. We'll also be presenting a progress report on home upgrade. That'll include updates from November, December, and January. Another event of interest, there's a climate center event on the future of the grid, which I thought tied nicely with our last presentation on January 30th. And if anyone wants a link to that, I can share that with you after this meeting. And then we also heard an interest from the vice chair for a quick update on our city electrification efforts relative to our Burgess campus pool electrification. So I want to kind of zoom out and look at Burgess campus as a whole. We've been working with PG&E through their government K through 12 program to replace gas water heaters for no cost to the city. So we are in permitting for City Hall, this facility, which makes our showers hot for our PD and for all employees. And then we're working with them for the pool showers as well. And that one right now, they're still running testing to see what sort of equipment would be best out there. We are wrapping up our greenhouse gas emission inventory for municipal operations, and between 2019 and 2024, we have reduced emissions from vehicles by 24% and reduced emissions from our buildings by 32%. And we're starting to see what sort of data we can publish through a new GIS tool and be able to communicate the story of the Tesla pilot as well as electrifying our Bellhaven community campus. And then as far as the pool goes, we're looking forward to that with our Public Works Director Azalea Mitch as part of the CIP budget development. We're in the stages right now. We have some money allocated to it, not enough. We're guessing, or we're estimating based on studies, that's gonna be 2 million or more to electrify the pool. And we still haven't come up with a good technology beyond heat pumps to power it. So we're looking at ground source heat pumps as an opportunity, but need to kind of get into that studying. And so hoping to secure more budget through the CIP, or also potentially leverage the PCE member agency grant. And we will be kind of making a determination on that grant funding in the next couple of months, once we make a determination on the home upgrade grant funding. So sequencing it a little bit, but there's not kind of an immediate update on the pool. It's kind of been in a holding pattern of aligning our CIP budget to the pool. But hopefully with the inventory, we're able to kind of express, by electrifying the pool at Bellhaven, we got 32% emission reductions. So that's where we're at. I'll leave it there. Did you want me to add anything about, or do you have any other specific questions about the pool?
Just curious, like how much life is left in the current pool heater?
That's an Ori question. I'll have him follow up.
Okay. No, thank you for the updates.
Yeah.
Any reports or announcements from commissioners? Okay. Then we'll move on to informational items, or I don't have to call for public comment. Reports or announcements?
You do.
Okay, are there any can I ask for public comments?
If there's any questions from the commission first.
Oh, okay. Clarifying questions on reports and announcements.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were moving to informational items.
No.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I was, but then I wasn't sure.
No, you're good. Please.
Okay,
There's no other updates? No other announcements? No, okay. Move on.
Well,
I
it's ready to
came
go
back
home.
oh, yes, I do that. Okay, it was going to sound a bit silly, but I think it's relevant. So, I haven't been in Paris in 20 years. It's amazing what the city is doing right now with, electric bicycles and bicycling and pedestrian and control of the center of the town. This is relevant to the whole discussion about what's going to happen with our downtown. The future is not cars. I know we know, but it is, right? It's like,
No, Europe's different than the US though.
I know, but it's still, I mean, my kids are not as car nutty as I was.
Yes.
I mean, our daughter says they have one car, that's the last car they are going to have. That's the future. The future is Waymos for some distributions, electric bicycles. That's where we're going. Anyway, it was very interesting to see. I mean, Paris changed a lot.
Did you see Waymo's there?
Sorry?
Did you see autonomous vehicles in Paris?
No, but bicycles everywhere. I mean, they have done an amazing work in the last 6 years, in the last couple of years with the Olympics. A lot of protected bike lanes. It's very interesting because in some roads, some streets, cars can go in one direction, bicycles can go in both directions.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of benefits of moving on a bicycle. You have much more visible mobility, and with electric bikes, everybody just exploded. Yeah, that's my regret.
Thank you. Actually, I do have one quick report. PCE's home upgrade program, which goes beyond Menlo Park. They're in soft launch mode right now. They'll do a hard launch once their website is fully updated. And so far, they've had 30 requests for assessments for whole home electrification. They've had 20 actual assessments scheduled and completed. And then of those 20, 10 actual projects are moving forward towards an agreement to do some form of home electrification.
So
So
these are zero interest loan projects.
these are the income qualified, no cost, whole home electrification program. That is the same program that PCE is running for Menlo Park, but
Got it.
it's also countywide, so. That's progress there. Okay, and then any others? Okay, we'll move on to informational items. Our next item is informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the EQC in staff's efforts to provide updates. Informational items are not action items. However, city council, staff, or members of the public may ask questions or make comment. Are there any questions or comments from the EQC on informational item F1, the 2024-25 Environmental Quality Commission work plan? I do have one. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring up here, but we have the subcommittees, and I am the only member of the resilience subcommittee. So I was wondering if this would be a time, or there would be another time to open it up to the commission to see if anyone wants to join me. Because my
We'll have to do that next
partner
time.
left for city council.
We'll have to do that
And
next time,
Okay. Sounds good.
but we can agendize that as part of the committee true-up item.
And you can remind us what is the resilience committee thing?
Yeah, we'll
cover that.
all be in the packet. Okay, do we have any public comment on this item, Sandra?
I will open up for public comment. I don't see any cards in the room. If you're online, you can press the raise hand button. Not seeing any, I will return the meeting to you.
Okay, this meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
At 9:44. Thank you.